And welcome to the Good evening and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of the 14th of June 2021. This meeting is being conducted in COVID-19 protocols in place for social distancing and isolation. The meeting is being conducted electronically using Zoom and is being live streamed on Facebook Live. The most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website, and the public may send questions directly to the recording secretary's email at jwest@kentville.ca. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? To our audience, you will notice that Councillor Paula Huntley is not in our Brady Bunch Squares this evening. She's actually phoned in, and we will be using voice and as well the use of email if she wishes to speak on a matter. As the Council Advisory Committee CAC, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. I will remind members of council that we should continue to be mindful of our decision-making wheel to make balanced and respectful decisions while adhering to our code of conduct. I would like to take this opportunity to offer my sincere apology to my council colleagues and the citizens of Kentville for my loss of meeting control at our May 31st council meeting. It is my responsibility as the chair to control the meeting, and I failed to do that, for which I commit to do better. Additionally, as the mayor, the Municipal Government Act, at paragraph 15.3, permits the mayor to communicate such information and recommend such measures to council as will improve the finances, administration, and government of the municipality. Democracy is not easy. It's a framework of laws, rules, and policies which provide us guidance in our work to our community and its citizens. However, there's also an unwritten commitment that each member of council makes to how we engage in the chamber, to only conduct our debate in this chamber, not via email or on social media. It is an agreement to work together to do the business of the town. We don't have to like each other or agree with each other, as long as we put the town of Kentville ahead of our own priorities. This council, through policies, has adopted Robert's Rules as our rules of order, our parliamentary procedure. And as the chair of the meeting, it is my responsibility to use those orders to ensure we get the business of the town done. Robert's Rules were originally published in 1876 and have continued to evolve over time. We currently use the 11th edition. However, these rules were never created for Zoom. As the chair, I will remind members of council that the rules of order will be used to maintain order. Members will seek the floor to speak through the chair and will only address the chamber when they have leave to do so. Only one person may hold the floor and speak at any one time. The mute button function will be exercised to meet this criteria. Members will address the chair, not individual members of council unless directed to do so. Members should speak to the issues, matters, and not the individual. Members may only speak twice on a matter. It must be germane and remain on topic. Members may only speak a second time after each member has had the opportunity to speak once on a matter. Members of council may call a point of order when a member does not follow the rules or makes an inappropriate remark, and it is the chair's duty to make a ruling. The ruling may be challenged, and if so, will be put to a vote. Members may call a point of personal privilege if the member considers the statement to impugn their integrity or the integrity of the council. When a point of order or a point of personal privilege is raised, the member who has the floor shall stop speaking. Mute all will be selected until the chair has resolved the matter. We have an unresolved matter from the May 31st council meeting. There was a point of privilege called on a member's comments for which the chair requested an apology. The member refused. However, the comments are contrary to the G16 Code of Conduct policy and further a direct violation of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. in that they constitute discrimination as defined in paragraph 4. For the purposes of this act, a person discriminates where the person makes a distinction, whether intentional or not, based on characteristics or perceived characteristics that has the effect to impose burdens, obligations, or disadvantages on an individual not imposed upon others, or which withholds or limits access to opportunities, benefit, and advantages available to other individuals or classes of individuals in society. It is recommended that the member apologize to this council. Councillor Maxwell, it is requested that you apologize to this council for your discriminatory comment.
As you can see, Mayor Snow, I have my hand raised. I would like to apologize directly to Councillor York, and I would like to apologize based on the comment that I made last meeting. And I would like to say that at the time I was asked to give an apology, I was prevented from doing so. And that I found to be a very frustrating situation. And of course, I would always apologize if I felt there was a reason to do so. I would like to say from one woman to another to Councillor York that I'm sorry that you heard something in my comment that would label me as sexist or anti-feminist. And I would say that if you knew me, you would know that would never be my intention, nor at all ever in my thoughts. Thank you, Mayor Snow.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. The decision wheel encourages us to assess every issue through the lens of property, environment, economics, social, and public opinion. As a new council, it's our responsibility to review our policies of council, ensure they meet the current requirements of our decision-making process, our community, and its citizens. We do have policies that need to be reviewed and updated, and we are committed to making those changes, and we continue to do so as part of our homework. This pandemic has also limited public participation and interaction at meetings, and we encourage you to follow the Town of Kentville website and social media for accurate and up-to-date information. We will be voting by poll, and the chair will call your name and ask, "How say you?" This method permits us to verbally record your vote. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences?
Yes, I have one. Under business arising from the old business, item 6.
Thank you, Councillor Zabian. CAO Trope, could you please take the roll call?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. And based upon the names I see here on the screen, and Paula, Councillor Huntley is phoning in, all of council is present and accounted for.
Thank you very much. CAO, we have been provided with a proposed agenda. Do you have anything to add to that agenda?
Yes, Mayor Snow, under, I would add 10B, which is under in camera. We have a land sale discussion to have this evening.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any further additions or deletions? Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion to move item 6C, the update on the Robinson property redevelopment, to in camera over an abundance of caution of what may come up in discussion around this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. So you are aware that 6C does not meet the consideration for an in-camera discussion. It is a completed contract which is publicly available, and the developer is coming to us with a direct question, which is the only business that will be conducted during that time. So I will state again that conversation, discussion must be germane to the topic. And we have also received information from our solicitor that this is not an entitled in-camera request. nor does it meet any of the criteria under the MGA for an in-camera. However, if you wish to move this forward, I will call for a vote of council.
Thank you. I would like to call for a vote of council, please.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor, how say you? To go in camera. You're mute.
It's, your worship is a seconder,
Oh,
not
sorry.
in.
Yes, yes, it is
Yep.
required. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Maxwell's motion to move item 6C into camera? Solicitor.
Yeah, your worship, I just, I don't want my comments that have been shared with council to potentially be mischaracterized, and I'm a little concerned that the summary was broader than what I said. I think I was very clear, and there's no problem with the public hearing this, that if council believes that the discussion on this topic is such that it may be broader than the specific issue, but yet be germane to the issue at hand, that council may want to take it in camera. I don't want it to be suggested that I've advised that it can't go in camera.
Okay.
It certainly can under the right circumstances. So it may be premature to deal with it at this point in the meeting. You may know more when the item arises on the agenda, but you certainly can deal with it at this point in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I will clarify my comments that the MGA gives us the ability to go in camera for acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal properties. This does not cover that topic. It gives us the ability to go in for setting a minimum price to be accepted by the municipality at a tax sale. This does not cover it. Personnel matters, labor relations, contract negotiations. This contract is finalized. It is not a negotiation. Litigation or prudential litigation, it is neither of those. Legal advice eligible for solicitor-client's privilege and public security. It does not fall within any of those terms. So I will move again. Yes, solicitor.
So your worship, I'm not trying to be contrary, but I think you're overstating the issue. It could be legal, because legal issues could
If
arise.
we do not
from the
remain
discussion.
germane in the question that's being asked.
And it is related to a contract. So to the extent that council wants to enter into discussion around negotiation of this particular contract, it could. The ask of council, however, is very specific, and there may not be any reason to go in camera. But if council decided it wanted to, then those would be the two avenues, would be perhaps legal advice or a contract negotiation.
Exactly. So if we remain germane on topic to the request that we have before us, is there any reason for us to be in camera for that discussion? To answer this, the one question that's being asked of us.
Yeah. It depends on where the discussion goes, your worship.
Exactly.
So the discussion, the council may feel that there is very limited discussion, and there may not be anything that it wants to do in closed session.
Right.
That's why I say it may be premature. It may be difficult to analyze this question now when the issue isn't actually before council until we get to that part of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, worship, and I'm being respectful of the fact that there's a motion on the floor and that it hasn't been seconded yet. So I'll just ask this. To Solicitor Matard's point, we won't know until we get there. We won't know how the discussion will, unfold until we actually get into the minutia of the topic. So that said, if it goes beyond the parameters as it should in an open session, can we then move it into in camera or
Yes.
not? We can. Okay.
We can immediately.
Okay.
I will clearly state, because I'm sure that the solicitor will have my eye, and we will, if this goes past the bounds, move it directly into the in camera. We will continue on with the remainder of the meeting and then put it into in camera.
Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, Councillor Maxwell.
That being said, Mayor Snow, I'm willing to withdraw my motion and hopefully we will be quick on the button.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, where were we? So we have an agenda. If I could have someone move that agenda, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My second, Councillor York. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion, all those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. You have been provided with the minutes of May 10th, 2021 CAC minutes for approval. Are there any changes to these minutes? If no, then they are approved as distributed. If yes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red. No change? All right, moving right along. We have two presentations this evening, and our first presentation is from the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition, and Beth Patillo will be presenting for us. And you have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you. And thank you to the Canfield Council for allowing us the opportunity to present to you on the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition. I think a number of you are familiar with the coalition. Some of you may not be. And we will begin a short presentation and then end with some period for questions. So maybe I should introduce myself. I'm Beth Patillo. I chair the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition. And with us will be Rick Jakes, who is the Annapolis Valley Trails coordinator. So if we could pull up our presentation, that would be wonderful. And I know somebody in the background is scrambling to get this done.
Beth, I haven't started the clock yet, so no worries.
Good, great, okay.
It's a beautiful presentation.
Great. The Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition, this is part of the series we're doing with our municipal partner updates. I just wanted to give you a kind of a sense of what the coalition is and what the coalition does. Okay, next slide, Rick, if you could. So why a coalition? And I know, given the current atmosphere and things, but one of the things that has really worked for us is the fact that the coalition is a partnership. Those folks that are interested in developing and maintaining a trail system throughout the Annapolis Valley. We share a common vision, maintain common standards, and giving help to our municipalities and our volunteers. And I want to stress the whole volunteer component, because two major parts of the Harvest Moon Trailway are maintained by volunteers. We also, this enables us to pool resources to hire a trails coordinator, who is Rick Jakes, and he provides a tremendous amount of support to our trail builders, those that maintain trails, those who want to build trails throughout the Annapolis Valley. It's one of the things that the province is how we do things here in the Valley is something that's being looked at by the province as to how we roll this out to the rest of the province. So who is the coalition, or who's involved? So it's partners. They consist of representatives from our municipalities, our towns and villages, our trail groups, lands and forestry, and I think I've got the right name, there, and community culture and heritage. So it is all of these folks coming together under our membership. Okay, next one, please. So we also are governed by a board, and that board is made, we have an AGM annually. So that board is made up of 5 annually elected community trail groups, 5 municipal partners, and 3 ex officios. So at this point, Kathy Maxwell is Kenfold's representative on the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition. Just to let you know, and so we have Lands and Forestry, Community Culture and Heritage, and Rick Jacobs is ex officio. Now, how we're funded, we have based our funding on a combination of uniform assessment and population. So we have divided that between, we have put that through Annapolis and Kings County, and done it that way. And then we have further funding from Community Culture and Heritage. And then we also have, we work with fees for service, maintenance contracts, and construction supervision. And our budget would be around about 100,000. So the things we provide to our trail groups would be, and I think you need to kind of get your head around the fact that we work with groups that do, that represent 3,700 kilometers of hiking, walking, biking, snowmobile, and ATV trails throughout the valley. And so we assist those groups in various areas of planning, construction, maintenance, design, and inspection. One of the big things that a lot of our groups are facing is the fact of bridge asset management. Now that sounds like a pretty dull topic, and you're going, okay, really? What do I want to do with this? But remember, every bridge needs to be inspected every 5 years to make sure it's safe. So who does that inspection? Who helps those groups with that inspection? That's one of the services that we offer our groups through the coalition. We've helped them construct 125 new bridges. We've rehabilitated as many more, and we have done 350 bridge inspections. And if other groups across the province are running into a real conundrum in regards to the bridge inspections, because it's a very costly item for them. Best practices. The best management practices, OHS, particularly through COVID, we've done a great deal of work with all of our groups in regards to COVID practices, what you should be doing and not doing on trails in regards to maintenance. How can you be safe in doing maintenance on trails? So we've spent a lot of work over the last 18 months working with our groups on this, working with landowner issues, accessibility, how do we manage this infrastructure? The other issue that we're really focusing in on is the climate change issue, because what was once a storm in one every 100 years is now a storm every 50, a storm every 25. And all of those things that affect our trails, like how big should you be putting a culvert in if you're looking at a major storm one every 25 years. It wasn't the kind of culvert that we would have said you should put in 5 years ago. So those are the kinds of things we're working with our group with. Marketing. Marketing is one of the things that a lot of folks have asked us about. And so we have been working with Tourism Nova Scotia on some of their videos, all that kind of thing as far as foreign and domestic travel. And then 18 months ago, it all turned. We weren't looking at foreign anymore. We were looking at how do we do the staycation stuff, which coincided really nicely with some of the stuff we'd been doing with 2 other of our destination trail partners in developing a website for the 3 destination trails. So if you check out destination trails for Nova Scotia, you will come up with a website. Each trail has its own page. We've worked with tourism to develop staycation packages that feature all of the things within each of those trails. So the other one we've done is work with Connect Nova Scotia on its trails guide. So all of the trails within the valley are on the Connect Nova Scotia site. We've also looked at a regional approach. How do we work with all of our partners through the 90 to 100 kilometers of the Harvest Moon Trailway? All of the counties, towns, villages, and trail groups. So what we did was develop a trail maintenance program that we could offer to all of those entities that were part of the Harvest Moon Trailway. And so 90 some odd % of them are on board. So we provide the maintenance for the trail that goes through their part, whether it's under an LOA or whether it's a town. And what that has done is given us some maintenance consistency. So the look is the same throughout the valley. It means that if we're getting somebody to do the work, if you're going to do the work for 10 kilometers, you can do the work for a whole lot more kilometers. And it makes it much more efficient. So that has helped us maintain the vegetation so that we're not slaughtering 10 acres of trees when we could have a canopy and it goes over, but we could just limit up. And we're working on the trail surfacing. Some of that is fairly old, and we're gradually working on upgrading that as we get the funding. The other is signage. Drainage is a huge issue in getting the water off the trail so it dries out, so that the surface stays firm. Has anybody seen a catastrophic weather event? No, we haven't seen Dorian, Arthur, none of those. So one of the things that we help our trail groups with, particularly Dorian has taught us a great deal, is that when you get 400 trees down over the trail and someone needs to get to the power station, and the only way they can get to the power station is via the trail. So it has become that secondary or primary, after a catastrophic weather event, a primary route of transportation to get to those critical infrastructure points. So, and we try to get out with it as soon as we can safely get out and get those trees down, moved off the trail so folks can move. And during Dorian, it became the primary transportation route for a great many people. Next one, please. Some of you who have used the trail, you have seen our amenity signage, letting people know what's available where, our wayfinding signage, getting users into your community so they know how far it is from point A to point B, and then the amenities can take them into your community. We've provided benches because that's one of the things that we heard that people needed, a spot just to sit quietly and take a breather. Data collection. It's one of the things that we've done over the last probably 7 or 8 years. We've had trail counters out in various parts of the valley to kind of log who's using the trail at what time, how many users. The incredible thing is this past 18 months, we have seen probably a 30% increase in the use of trails, no matter where they are, whether it is Grand Pré or whether it's Annapolis Royal. It is amazing the number of users that we have on those trails, to the point where we're going, okay, we built it, we asked them to come, and now we're going, okay, now what do we do? So that data collection is incredibly important for all of us as we look at how do we build spurs and loops and connectivity. The coalition is not just here in the valley. We're kind of connected from a provincial level. I chair the Nova Scotia Trails Federation, Trans-Canada Trail. Rick co-chairs the Trans-Canada Trail Western Loop Committee. I chair the Nova Scotia or the Trail Strategy Coordinating Group. I sit on the Off-Highway Vehicle Fund. Rick is an integral part of the Accessibility Directorate and is helping Gord Tate with the Destination Trails website. And he also co-chairs the Provincial Trails Risk Management Committee. So from a coalition perspective, we've got a lot of fingers in a number of different pies that gives us a pretty good provincial perspective on what's happening in trails in Nova Scotia. I'm finished talking, which is probably a good thing for everybody.
All right, Beth, thank you. Thank you very much. Jason, if we can go back to our regular screen, and if there, oh, there's Beth. You were on the
I'm still here. Haven't gone anywhere.
All right, if there's any questions for Beth or Rick, now is your opportunity. Please use the raise hand feature, and we can, Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I just want to thank you, Beth, for the presentation, and thanks for those trails. Well, I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Beth. Thanks for
Hi.
the presentation. It's always lovely to hear about our trails and all the components of it, so I appreciate that. One of the things that you talked about was the connectivity piece, and you're probably aware that we, at our last council meeting, approved our accessibility plan. And I'm just wondering sort of if you've had an opportunity to review it and sort of what your initial thoughts are on it so far, and how you see the trails sort of intertwining with that plan.
I'm gonna do this from a two-pronged approach. I'm gonna answer it, and then I would like Rick to answer it from his perspective. To be honest, I have not had a chance to review it. We've been heavily involved with the Kings County Active Transportation one. So I'm hoping those will all meld together. From the accessibility perspective, Rick has had a fair amount to input from them, and I'm going to ask Rick if he could fill in from there. Rick, can you do that?
I can. It almost mirrors where the province seems to be heading as far as legislation goes. So you guys are on the right track, I will say, from your accessibility group and your accessibility plan. I think it's going to be a challenge to get to where we need to be for everybody. There's no doubt about that, and it's going to take a huge commitment from councils from a financial perspective. But having said that, you know, it seems like we got a lot of time, but that date's going to creep up pretty quick. I think one of the biggest challenges we see throughout the province is that about 80% of trails in the province are delivered by volunteers. And that's going to make it a little difficult to, you know, to figure out how to fund this thing. It's a lot of pancake breakfasts to get something accessible. But the general thinking is if we can start deliver really good, high quality, accessible opportunities in each jurisdiction versus making everything accessible to everybody all the time, we can make a really good, you know, part of the ravine, you know, can be accessible. It would be, you know, just about impossible to make all of it accessible. So you have a lot of things, you know, but having said that, a lot of people say, well, what about an accessible mountain bike park? Well, yes, grandma needs to get there to take the kids, and grandma has a mobility issue. You know, you guys are on the right track about where you're going with it. I think we can, you know, we'll be certainly working together. I noticed with both accessibility plans and with AT plans, the name Harvest Moon Trailway pops up at about every third, you know, verse, chapter, and paragraph. So I think it's going to be lots of fun involved there. And the good news is, quite frankly, your connection through the downtown core and stuff that's yet to be completed can be, you know, thank goodness you didn't build it necessarily before accessibility was all decided and everything else and have to change anything. So there has been a lot of apprehension for municipalities to jump into a build this last year, waiting for what's happening with accessibility. So I think it's quite timely, but I think we're all on the right track.
Thank you so much.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Zabian, did you wish to speak again? Okay. All right, well then Councillor Maxwell.
I just wanted to thank Beth and Rick for coming and giving the presentation, and look forward to our next meeting. I just wish it could be in person, but I'm sure it'll probably be Zoom for a while.
Will be.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next presentation is with regards to Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Physician Community Navigator with Judy Rayfuse and Brianna Hall.
Hello.
Hey, Brianna.
Hi. All right.
Hey, Judy.
Hi, everyone.
there you
Thank you for, it took me a while to rejoin there, sorry. But thanks for giving us a little bit of time this evening to speak with you. We'll not take any more than our 10 minutes, and we'll certainly be open to questions. I'm Judy Rayfuse. I am currently the project coordinator for the Chamber for Tourism and Doctor Recruitment and Retention for the next 2.5 weeks. I've been working with Brianna, and we're working on some funding. If everyone involved in this meeting, everyone that I see in my Brady Bunch squares and everyone else has a family doctor, consider ourselves very lucky. But many Nova Scotians do not. So the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce joined a coalition of municipalities 2 years ago, 2019, and we applied for funding through the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage, and received project funding for doctor retention and recruitment. And then when COVID hit, we kind of got put on the back burner a bit, and it took us a while to regroup, but we hired our Physician Community Navigator, Brianna Hall, in August of 2020. And Brianna is going to present the bulk of this presentation, and then I'll come back at the end. So if you can put our presentation up, then we're good to go. that the presentation was sent to Jen last week, so I assume that someone there is putting it out.
Yeah, I can take care of that for you. It'll just take me a minute to find it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, I think it looks like we're ready. Perfect. So I just want to thank everybody for having me here tonight. I'm Brianna Hall, Physician Community Navigator for the Annapolis Valley, and we'll get started with the presentation. So the Annapolis Valley Collaborative Committee is the committee that oversees my position and that supports my position as well. So the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce, the municipality of the County of Kings, the town of Wolfville, Western Kings Memorial Health Society, the town of Middleton, and a representative now from the Mid-Valley Region Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee as well. Our funding partners at the moment are the municipality of the County of Kings, Valley Regional Hospital Foundation, the town of Wolfville, Western Kings Memorial Health Society, New Minas Sunrise Rotary Club of Kempville, Department of Communities, Cultures and Heritage, and Doctors Nova Scotia. The position funding is from all of them, and project funding primarily from Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage, and Doctors Nova Scotia. So what we do know is that there's a significant doctor shortage in Nova Scotia and citizens are in need of our help. So according to Nova Scotia Health's Need a Family Practice Registry, as of April 1st, 2021, 64,921 Nova Scotians are on the Need a Family Practice Registry. The report also shows, as of April 1st this year, 24,942 registrants in the Western Zone and 11,135 are in our Annapolis and Kings County without a family practice. So we do know that we need doctors. And we have some opportunities. So let's show the Dalhousie Family Medicine residents that they can have it all. 10 Dalhousie Family Medicine residents work alongside preceptors for a 2-year work term throughout Kings and Annapolis counties. The residents are adventure enthusiasts who enjoy exploring the outdoors, local cuisine, and also culture. After their 2nd year, we hope that they choose the Annapolis Valley to practice. We know that 60% of residents placed in the Valley choose to stay after their 2nd year term, and we need to provide community support and connections for those medical residents while they're here. Building relationships. So we need to build relationships to support doctors and Dalhousie Family Medicine residents. Provide lifestyle, recreation, and community supports. We need to build relationships with Dalhousie Family Medicine Site Administrator and continue building relationships with Nova Scotia Health staff. Working with community members to provide resources and support to the medicine residents and the doctors already here. Building community networks to aid friendships for doctors and medicine residents. Our action plan. So our goal is to bridge the gap in physician retention and help ensure all residents in our region have access to primary health care. So let's continue to build relationships with Nova Scotia community navigators, Nova Scotia Health, community volunteers and stakeholders, doctors and medicine residents. Celebrate new and exciting and existing medical residents and physicians. And let's market the Annapolis Valley as a welcoming community that has it all. Compile and deliver a toolkit of resources available to Nova Scotia Health's recruitment consultant, and create a strong supportive volunteer action team in each community. Let's continue to host events for medical colleagues and inviting community partners as well. So welcoming new doctors and residents to our communities. These are the medicine resident welcome baskets that we did last year. So we've filled baskets with donations from local businesses and community members to support our new and returning Dalhousie family medicine residents. There was 10 of them there. And we hosted an event with Jeremy Novak, the Valley Ghost Walks. A spectacular ghost walk was in October. And this is a photo that represents a couple of our family medicine residents, Karma Chakowski, the recruiter at the bottom, myself, and Carmen Kerr as well. We have been juggling a little bit with our events because of COVID, of course. So we're trying to get them in when we can. And this time in March, we had a Hutchinson's Acres Sugar Bush tour where we learned about making maple syrup in Nova Scotia and got to tour the facility there as well. We had the Apple Dome skating party for preceptors, families, and all the family medicine residents as well in March. And this is the Dalhousie Family Medicine Virtual Retreat that I participated in September, shortly after I started in August last year. From over 100 Dalhousie Family Medicine residents, the Annapolis Valley had the most visits during the virtual job fair. Nova Scotia Community Navigators and myself partnered with Doctors Nova Scotia to create a weekend giveaway package. This was a package that was given away through a draw, and a doctor had won from New Brunswick and stayed in the valley for the weekend. Our door prize was a hot air balloon for 2 to travel across the Annapolis Valley, won by one of our medicine residents, actually, which is interesting. Doctors Nova Scotia virtual holiday event. We did this at Christmas. We couldn't gather and celebrate together. Many residents are from abroad, and so the best thing we could think of was to locally source some food and beverages and deliver them to 25 residents and preceptors from Wolfville to Annapolis Royal for a virtual holiday cooking show with the local chef, Sean Laceby. We had Doctors' Day. This was in May, on May 1st. We did radio PSAs, partnered with Doctors Nova Scotia. Radio stations that we advertised was Magic, AVR, and Rewind. We circulated an appreciation flyer, and this was electronically this year. Due to COVID, we did things all from a distance. Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce had participated as well through the e-newsletter and their social media and all of the website. We asked members to display a message of thanks on their roadside signs, splash screens, and their billboards as well. So we have some volunteer opportunities, and we feel with small steps from local supporters like yourselves, we can bridge the gap in healthcare and amongst the Annapolis Valley. So we need you. We need help with welcome baskets, assisting site visits, co-hosting events, being an outreach resource, and building connections as well. We need those buddy systems established and those volunteers in place to help welcome the doctors and show the medicine residents that this is truly the place to call home and to have it all.
So we know the importance of retaining doctors, and we do have the opportunity through our Dalhousie residents. The 5 graduating residents this year are all staying within the Annapolis Valley, although one is going to be on mat leave for the next year. However, she is staying, so she will finish out her residency once her maternity leave is over next June, I believe it is. And you can see that Brianna has been very busy. She works part-time, 15 hours a week. She gets paid part-time. Trust me, she works much more. And the project funding is just for projects. And while we know that the province is responsible for recruiting doctors, we do know that once they are recruited and they are here, Nova Scotia Health is done with them. And they're not, there's no one to welcome them. There's no one to make sure they're settling in well, to make sure they have all the comforts they need and all the information they need for schools, for outdoor activities, and all the other community things that we want them to know. So we have had to look for funding for Brianna's position, which she shared in the beginning of the presentation, came from municipalities, the town of Wolfville, Rotary Clubs, the Valley Hospital Foundation, the Western Kings Memorial Health Society. And so we are here this evening asking the town of Kentville to consider a fund of $5,000 per year for the next 3 years to help fund our physician community navigator to help retain and recruit doctors to our area. So thank you very much for your time. And if anyone has any questions, Brianna has all the answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. That's great. Yes, I'm here to answer any questions and carry on conversation if we can.
Thank you very
Hi,
much.
Brianna, it's Paula.
Hi, Paula.
Hi. I was wondering, you had said a number, 60% choose to stay.
Yes.
I was wondering, what would make that percentage a little higher? Has there been any comments about if this was here, then I could stay? I'm just curious.
That's a great question, Paula. Actually, one that gets often quite frequently asked. That percentage is really good, actually. So the small percentage that is missing there typically is a reference to it could be a med resident that is here for their 2 years, but they're pulled in another direction because of their spouse. Maybe they have family in another area too as well. That often can be a pull. But the Annapolis Valley is known for a really great retention rate, and I think it's a very easy sell here. Our communities are beautiful. They're neighborly. There's so much to be said. I think about our communities being very, very special. And that's the feedback that we've received also this year, working closely with the residents, is that they love it here. And I think that's a reflection of our numbers this year as well, with having a navigator. We can report those to our communities and celebrate all together that we have five staying, which is great. So we're capped at our 5 number.
And I think to add to that, Councillor Huntley, is some of them may go on to specialized fields. So that would attribute to that number as well.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. If somebody wanted to volunteer for those welcome baskets, is that information on your website?
We don't currently have a website right now, personally directed to this role. We are working with the Valley Regional Enterprise Network right now to create a landing page off the habitallav.com site or .ca site. And that's where we'll have a healthcare section and a directory. But we don't have one as of now. There is posting on volunteerns.ca, and you can reach our profiles on there, and you can reach out, and it's a direct link to my email, and also my phone number is there too, Paula. We can connect if you're interested.
Excellent. Okay, I'm interested. Thank you so much for all the information. So informative.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Brianna, for the presentation. It looks like you are doing fantastic work, and that's really nice to see. I may have missed it in the presentation, but I'm just wondering, for like your position and so on, does the province of Nova Scotia help to fund that position, or is that totally communities and so on?
Yes, it is mostly made up of community support for funding. There's nothing there that's province-wide.
Nothing.
Not at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. That's disappointing to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and we do continue to advocate to the province through Department of Community, Culture and Heritage and Department of Health to say these positions are needed in the communities. They show that they are helping to attract and retain our doctors and our residents. So there is advocacy work happening on that as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Thanks, Mayor Snow. Thanks, Brianna, and thanks, Judy. Just wondering, since July, since you started this, I guess, do you know how many doctors you may have, I guess, influenced or retained in the Valley or in the Annapolis Valley?
So we have many doctors throughout the Valley. So I oversee, just to kind of narrow it back a little bit, Wolfville to Annapolis Royal. So our Annapolis Valley, our Dalhousie Family Medicine Annapolis Valley site, the teaching site actually covers that whole area. So my position started in Kings County, but has, since I've started, realized that it needed to grow a little further to cover the medicine residents as well. So definitely the retention with the residents for sure. The doctors, as a whole, we've had our first contact with all of the doctors all virtually this year. So it just, Doctors Day landed at maybe the worst time in a way. We were just approaching a lockdown, so there was no in-person drop-offs. We had to quickly change all of our plans from in-person support, which would have been, you know, an in-person event where we would invite all doctors to participate, community members to help support that as well. And that would be optimum at this time, is to have something like that. And I think we will get there, but we're working with the COVID restrictions and those guidelines. It's just been, you know, one day we're on the track going somewheres and next we're off track. So I think we are going there, but we had the Nova Scotia Health had circulated our emails and our flyers and, you know, made that point of contact on our behalf, which is great, that we have that relationship. So we did reach all inboxes for all the docs in the Annapolis Valley. I think that's the best we can do. The radio PSAs from a distance, we tried to do that, and we certainly reached out to try to do a partnership with 14 Wayne Greenwood as well, but those plans didn't end up working out as well. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, just working with all of that. I do see it going in a different direction, but it will be some awesome celebration once we can finally do that. One new doctor has come since I've been on. And she's working in Kentville and she's living in Wolfville. So Wolfville seemed to be her place, but she really wanted to work in Kentville. So she's kind of sharing both communities, which is lovely. And she's actually traveling to Middleton to do some part-time work out there as well. So she is a citizen that's staying here. She's relocated with her mom and her dad as well. So they came along with her. And this is where she wants to be after traveling and living and abroad. This is her place. So it's really nice to know that this is the place she's calling home, and working on getting them here was a really great success story. So that's a big win for us, I think.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Brianna. Thanks for
Hi.
your presentation. And hi, Judy, and happy almost retirement in 2 weeks. Good for you. Just kind of wondering, so you talked a little bit about the Department of Culture and Heritage and Department of Health. So where do you see them fitting into the funding piece of this for this program? Because I know at this juncture, as you just said to Councillor Zabian, they don't fund any part of the position, but they fund in other ways. So that's kind of part one of the question. And then part two of the question is, you know, you talked about 60% of the residents and preceptors staying now. So where do you want to see that percentage go to? And I guess, what does success look like for you with this program? Thank you.
Yeah, so the first section, the first part of your question, we've had I would say most navigators have Nova Scotia Community Cultures and Heritage as part of their funding. It's too bad that we don't have funding for our position, and I don't know if there is a way to have that conversation with them to help support the person doing it as well. So what it came back to is that it's great to have this position and it's working so well. It's proving itself that it does work. But the problem is that it doesn't have, there's no funding in place for someone to do it, and the volunteers are exhausted and burnt out trying to establish their own businesses and keeping those going. So we are seeing that it's a position that needs to be funded to have somebody doing it full time. So right now I'm working probably 60 hours a week and only paid for 15. There's finding accommodations for doctors, residents, and med students. It's just, there's so many. I've had an influx in my inbox lately, just trying to get those 5 residents that are just coming here too as well, trying to get them some accommodations for short-term stay can be quite challenging. So just multitasking, it's a lot. It's definitely something that not even one navigator can handle. We need our volunteers to help support our projects as well. It's we need help of the community to do those community tours, show them around, do that buddy system, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of where we're going. I don't know if there's an approach that we can do to see if they will support, change that a little bit and help support the funding for the navigator position. I'm not sure, but it's something that we could definitely reconsider.
It's the advocacy work that we're doing with the government,
Yeah.
trying to find what department that we go through. We know Community Cultures and Heritage do the project funding. Is there any room in that to fund the position or partially fund the position even, so that we can leverage dollars to get more money for the position? Or is it something that Nova Scotia Health is, why aren't they seeing that this is a very worthwhile position and it should be funded in each community? Each community navigator across the province is funded differently. This is, and some of them are very similar to ours. They're funded by community groups and municipalities and so on. So that's kind of where we are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions for our guests? Judy, I do have one. So your request is for $5,000 for the town of Kentville over 3 years. How did you come up with that number?
I just kind of use the same formula we used for tourism when we asked for funding. It's loosely based on number of people in town. I know there's more people in town of Kentville than that, but that's kind of how we based it, the same as our tourism.
Right. And so the ask is going out to all the municipalities across Kings and Annapolis County. Have you made all of your presentations at this point?
No, we haven't made all of our presentations yet. We've presented to the municipality of Kings, town of Wolfville, the town of Middleton is involved on our committee, so they have the ask as well. And we haven't made a presentation to the county of Annapolis yet.
Okay. Well, so the town of Kentville has already passed its budget for this year. However, we have not done our grant work yet, so there is still some availability there. If you want to connect with Jennifer West, you could get an application, and we realize get that in. But the other thing as well is that perhaps liaison with our CAO to provide some background and some details of the funding that you're looking for and how the money is spent, and as well looking at the town of Kentville itself and putting that into perspective with this ask. Right now we have 2.15 vacancies for doctors in the town of Kentville. The other thing that I'd like to express is that the Annapolis Valley has had the highest rate of of retention of our residents in Nova Scotia. And based on the number that you just provided of 5 more are staying, that actually makes 31 out of 33 residents since 2012 who have made a decision to stay in Nova Scotia. So I think that we have a very successful plan, and that, you know, our number is actually higher than 60% if you include Kentville in that number, which probably wasn't done the first time that this document went out. But, you know, I would just put those things on the table. Councillor Zabian, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Snow. I just wanted to ask Judy, did you approach the village of New Minas?
Yes, we do have a presentation to the Village in Minas in July.
Okay.
And we've also had, we've had word of mouth of support from the villages of Kingston and Greenwood towards Brianna's position as well.
And have any of these communities or municipalities agreed yet, or you're just still presenting?
No, we're still presenting. The municipality of Kings is just reviewing their process tomorrow, I think it is. We just presented to the town of Wolfville a week or so ago, so I haven't heard back from them yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Great presentation, truly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on now to our department reports and recommendations. The directors have provided their reports for your review and are present if there are questions. CAO Troke, would you please introduce our department reports and recommendations?
Certainly will. So tonight we'll be starting off with finance, and we will have Director Kroll.
Thank you and good evening to everybody. It's my pleasure to bring you the report from the Finance Department for the month ended May 31st. We're looking at a benchmark of 16.7% if everything was averaged evenly over the year. There's not a lot happening right now. It's early in the year. However, we do have revenue reporting at 36.8% at the end of May. And of the $5 million that we have recorded for revenue, 4.9 of it comes from the interim tax billing. On the expenditure side of the ledger, we're a little bit over the benchmark of 16.7%. We're sitting at 19.4%. A good portion of the overage comes from the fact that we paid our insurance, our general insurance premium on April of the 1st, actually. And we have had the first quarterly billings afforded to us from Valley Waste and from King's Transit Authority. So that kicks our percentage slightly over the 16.7%. Looking at taxation, we have the interim tax bill, which was due on May the 31st. The current tax levy outstanding at the end of May is $338,780. That's 92.7% of the interim levy collected. Total property tax outstanding, and this includes the interim billing plus some arrears that are still outstanding. We're looking at that total being $390,864, and that's 91.7% collected overall of all our outstanding taxation. There's no comparison this year because last year's due date was June the 30th for taxes because of the COVID pandemic. So I did put the figure of what was outstanding at the end of May. It was $3.3 million. So there really isn't any comparison from year to year. Once we get into the end of June, we'll have comparative numbers for between this year and last year. So basically, that's basically my report. We have the capital investment plan showing there in Schedules G. We budgeted $2.3 million. We're in the early stages of the capital program. We only have $42,670 recorded at the end of May. So not a lot there, but you can pick through and see what the projects are and see where the money has been spent. And that's my report. You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Director Kroll. Are there any questions for the director on her report? No questions? All right, then let's move on to planning with Director Gentleman, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As CAO Troke did indicate, the report has been provided to council. So if it's okay, I'll just go over the highlights of my monthly report. I'd like to report that there were 21 development permits issued for a building valuation of $2.7 million for this month. That has brought us up to just over $19.5 million worth of development for this calendar year. The other projects that we've been reporting on over the last few months, Ryan's Park and Miners Landing, they're continuing to proceed. The cost and the lack of availability of a lot of construction materials have really kind of slowed some projects down. But hopefully that will turn around and those projects will continue to move ahead more quickly. The River Street project, River Street lands have closed, and those developers are very excited about moving ahead with their development. This summer, during the dry season, they'll be focusing on some of the environmental work that they have to do for the prep of the land. And the type of development that they're doing is kind of a tilt-up kind of development. They have a facility in Trenton, down towards Pictou area, where they'll be doing a lot of the walls and the floors and then transporting them to the site and putting them up. As you are aware, we had some planning strategy and land use bylaw housekeeping amendments that had gone to a public participation meeting on May 20th to gather public input about some of those items, and also council's request to look at some changes to the C2 zone to allow residential uses. There were no comments on that at all from that public participation meeting. However, a report later in the agenda will be provided to council with an update on some of the options that council requested with regards to if we do allow residential uses within the C2 zone, how much, if any, commercial use should be required within those developments. So there'll be a secondary report with regards to that. And again, almost in tangent with that, Stone Mountain Retirement folks have submitted a new application for rezoning, for a spot rezoning on the Park Street, the corner of Park and Shiloh, for the retirement home facility that they wish to build. They want to go from a C2 to a C1. And again, another report later on in the night, we'll talk about that a little more in detail. Kirsten has been working with the recreation department with trying to get the dog park moving ahead. We were originally denied the variance from the marshland variance from the administrator. Because they felt that there was going to be some incompatibility with dogs and cows. But at this point, there aren't any cows anymore. So an appeal to that decision has been submitted with quite a bit of information that hopefully we'll have some, we'll look at that and realize that a dog park would not be an incompatible use with the cows. Other than that, just been day-to-day operations, and there's my report.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Gentleman, the Ryan's Park project, I know they're first doing the pocket park first for those units. When those anticipated to be finished? I'm assuming it's not going to be this year. It's probably going to be into the spring of next year.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Again, construction costs have gone up so much over this last year, and availability of materials have made it very difficult for a lot of people to move ahead within their scheduled development time. So they're doing the best that they can, and they are anxious to get going and continue to build their Ryan's Park. But at this point, you're right. It's the Ryan's Park aspect of it that's first on the agenda prior to the apartments.
Right, yeah. So again, probably into the spring and keeping in mind that, you know, the building materials are up and so on and so forth, but probably with folks like that, where it's all pre-planned, they would have had fixed price contracts, I would imagine. So it's, yeah, I would think. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Are there any further questions for Director Gentleman on this report? None? All right, then we will move on to the Community Economic Development Report. Are there any comments on this report? And I will direct you to CAO Troke on those ones.
If I could, Mayor Snow, I'd like to also just point out that the Visitor Information Center, we've done some painting, we've done some work down there, so you'll see a bit of a refresh on the building with the intent that, you know, we're going to be reopening in early July. You know, basically there is some long-term capital considerations there, particularly on the exterior of the building. So we've done some work to continue moving forward this year, but we'll be bringing back some of the things that need to be done there long-term, just as we slide into next year. Also wanted to point out that the litter kit program this year was very successful. We had over 25 different participants, so folks effectively come in, get the litter kit in, and collect items around the community and bring those back for disposal. So we had a lot of people during COVID wanting to roll up their sleeves and go out there and clean up parks and clean up sidewalks and so on, and get their kids involved. So, you know, some really great pieces. But I'll stop there, and if there's any questions, I do my best to respond.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Zabian, please.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Thanks, CAO Trope. Just wondering, I know there was some conversation with the Kentville Historical Society, I think on some minor repairs there. Wondering if that's been addressed yet, or if where that's going.
So thank you. Yeah, so I had a tour of the facility March, April, and since then, Mr. Pearl's been in contact with me. And what we're looking to do is, after we kind of finish the work on the VIC, there's 3 items, and we sequence those items that kind of they need to be done, not in sequence, but more in priority. And so Director Bell was working with his team, and some of this stuff might actually, particularly in window caulking, painting, we may actually even have an outside source who might do some of that. So yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago. I had some conversation with them, and we'll sequence that in with them over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there anything else on this report? Nothing? All right, then we will move on to our recreation report with Director Bedfield.
Evening, everyone. I just have a few things I'm going to highlight in my report. You have the whole thing in front of you. I'm going to start with the pool, because that's always the most anticipated, certainly since we didn't open it last year. We're working really hard to get the pool open for July 1st. We're still on schedule to do that, which is no small feat. So kudos to the park staff for all the work they're doing on that. And then with regards to restrictions and programming, we've started to solidify that, and we will be reaching out to the public later on today. We are planning on having some swim lessons. We're a little bit limited with public health restrictions and things, but there will be some swimming lessons and aquafit, and we're introducing a new program called Aqua Go, which is dancing in the water type of thing. So there's lots of fun stuff there, but the pool season will be up and going, so we're excited for that. The splash pad, I mentioned in my report that it'll be open as soon as the shade sails are up. You can see that the shade sails are up, but now we have a problem with the pipe. So we're just waiting on that piece to be delivered. And so fingers crossed it will be open by the end of the month. Under summer programs, just really quickly, we opened up day camp registration and it immediately filled. We had a waiting list, so we hired an extra staff and that immediately filled. So people are very excited to find places for their children this summer. We also have launched a new program, the Leader in Training program, and this is geared towards our 14 and 16-year-olds as part of our youth development series. And this is giving folks a chance for a couple weeks to try their, kind of a first real job, and we're going to provide a lot of training, and they're also going to help keep our ratios from leaders to campers down. And then we have our 12 to 14-year-old series that will be coming up, and that's a number of skilled, very focused opportunities for that age group, because what I've heard is that camp is not cool for that age group, but if we call it a program, it's totally acceptable. So just as an FYI. And our department, you may have heard, has launched a new initiative called Rec Texts. So if you haven't signed up for Rec Texts yet, then please do. And this is just one more way that we can make sure that everybody's up to speed with the copious amounts of information that we throw out there quite often. Just quickly under capital, today was the day that they broke ground on the skate park bowl. That's really exciting, and you may have read it in Deb's report, but we also received the grant money to go towards the construction of the skate park. So that's also a bonus, and that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Thanks, Director Benningfield. You guys are busy in that department, so I want to thank you for that. Just two little questions. I know we touched on this last week. Just a lot of people are complaining about on the trail that there's not enough places to put pet waste. And just wondering if there's any way there could be another one put, maybe some midway. That's one question. And the other thing, I know that skate park's busy and that's great for Kempful. Do we have, and I haven't been there to look, do we have no smoking signage there? I had a few people on the weekend complain that there was older kids smoking, and maybe the police could chime in on that, but you probably know if there is. Thank you.
Yep, there's signage for all of the bylaws at the skate park. There's signage about smoking and helmet use, and we're working with the police to try and support that. So certainly if anybody sees anybody breaking those bylaws, they encourage to call the Kempful police. With regards to receptacles for pet waste, the more receptacles we put out, then the more time staff is required to go and empty them. So yeah, like I said in my email, we do offer some places for folks to put their waste, but we encourage, if you have a pet, you are responsible for your pet. Littering is a violation and you will get fined. And so we provide free bags and free receptacles. Yeah, I think if we responded to every request to put a receptacle to carry your dog's poop, I totally get it.
Thank you.
In the winter, you can put it in your pocket. It's like a hand warmer, just as a.
There you go.
And with that, Deputy Mayor, it's your turn.
Or tie it onto their leash. They don't mind it, actually. I see a lot of people do that. It works, right? You know,
that's
when
a great
you have
idea.
a dog, there's poop. So thanks, Director Benningfield. I just have a couple of questions. Number one, when you talked about the grant money coming in for the skateboard park, the bowl, is that revitalization grant?
So that was through the Recreation Facility Development Grant Program that we applied for. Different grant.
So if we get funds under this other grant, this revitalization grant, that would be even more money going towards the bowl?
Yeah, but we haven't applied for monies under that grant for the skate park that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The second one is about the Spike Fund. And I know Mayor Snow normally mentions something about this, and maybe she had planned to, but maybe you could mention a little bit about it and talk about how people can contribute for all these wonderful kids that want to go to camp, and we can help them go.
I very much appreciate that, Deputy Mayor Savage. Thank you for that beautifully smooth prompt. Yeah, the Spike Fund. Sorry, I need to do my annual campaign. Thanks to all of those who have donated, first and foremost, we really appreciate it. The Spike Fund was created to fill a gap that existed in the funding system for recreation opportunities. So often what happens when you give us a call to say, I need a little help accessing the programs, our staff work very hard to figure out how we can do that, whether it's monies for equipment or transportation or working with a partner. We first and foremost try and put you through other existing programs that are out there, but they're what's happening out there is that their limits are becoming tighter and tighter and tighter. And so there's very little funding that exists in the province and to be honest, across Canada, for folks to access recreation. And that includes arts. There is no funding out there for folks to access arts. So originally Spike Fund was created to support folks 18 and older because there's no funding that exists for that group. And we know that kids are more likely to be active and engaged if their parents are active and engaged. And then the need for access to summer program was just so great that we opened it up to summer, to all folks in the summer. And you don't have to attend a Kentville summer program, a Kentville program at all. You do need to be a resident of Kentville. So I'm putting out a plug to say that our staff are here to make sure that you can access anything, but also it doesn't work unless we receive donations, and that you will receive a tax receipt for that. Thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm assuming, Director Bedingfield, that we'll win the appeal concerning the cows and the dogs. But I'm just wondering if we don't, is there a plan B, another location that is available for dog park?
We had, so when we were working with the community group that's advocating for a park, we had looked at the land that was, that exists, behind the skate park that we would need to purchase as a town. It wasn't as ideal for our next stop. The one piece there is that this is why this location was quite good as well, because it's kind of the link between the two communities, but that would be our next go. I've had like preliminary conversations with New Minus about what our options are should we should the concern be that the cows are going to jump the fence, but yeah, that would be the next step.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Don't cows jump over the moon?
It's like a sitcom, I'm telling you.
All good. It's all good. Without having to climb over all this stuff, we'd think it was all too easy. Anyway, thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Director Bedingfield. So we move on now to our police report, and I will ask our chair of the police commission if he has anything to add or say about the chief's report. You're on mute.
Of course I am. I don't have anything to add. I don't have anything. I will take questions and answer them to the best of my ability if anybody has questions, but we have not met since. We are meeting this month come snowstorms or whatever, but no, we haven't met, but like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory, but if anybody does have a question, I will answer.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Sapien.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I might direct this to CEO Troke. He probably has the answer. Do you know how many, are you allowed to tell us how many people have applied for the role as chief? Do you have that information?
So I do. We haven't finished sorting yet. I had about 24 direct inquiries from people, and we ended up, I believe, something in the 15 to 20 range with regards to applications. Of course, a lot of these I have to sort through, and then we'll be bringing that to the commission to be having a conversation about how we'll be moving forward then with the interview process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and now we will move on to Engineering and Public Works with Director Bell, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Start out with programs. I'll be brief. Programs and operations. We received notice in late May from FCM that we were successful with our application for the Municipal Asset Management Program. This is a grant for up to $49,050 for the continuation of the development of Kentville's Master Asset Management Plan, which we will be doing later this summer, again with a cohort similar to what we did last year with some through the AIM network. Under Public Works, the Capital Works tender for The total infrastructure rebuild of Burke subdivision closed last week, which is the streets of Pleasant, Colonial, Hillside, and Fairview. We had 3 tenders submitted, all from local contractors, the 2 lowest being very close and competitive, with Mid-Valley being the low bidder. The project came in under budget. It meets the criteria set out in our budget approvals, and we plan to proceed with the contract award to Mid-Valley Construction for summer construction with an expected completion date of fall of this year. The first round of patch paving in the downtown and East End was completed 2 weeks ago. And the contractor will be back to complete the downtown core and the West End later this week, likely, and then begin on side streets shortly after that. Line painting, catch basin repairs have been keeping Public Works crew busy, and like many supplies and equipment, there is a national shortage of white road paint. We've had it ordered now for several months. No one can get it for us, but we did hear last week that it should be in sometime the middle of the month, which I guess would be this week. We have plenty of yellow, so we're doing the hatching and picking our spots strategically for crosswalks and things like that, and completed as soon as they arrive. Under the Water Commission, this hotter, drier weather has contributed to nearly a 20% increase in our water consumption, up from 900,000 a day to about 1.1 million. So that's just at the Prospect site, which is really the main feed for the town, excluding the far west end and the business park. But much of this increase is due to to lawn irrigation and swimming pool openings, which we see typically every summer. But it has put a bit of a strain this year on our systems. We have 1 of our 5 well pumps down for repair. We have 7 wells actually in total, but 2 of them pump to the business park. We expect that to be back online this week with the last of the equipment being installed at that well house. So that'll smooth things out once we get that 5th well back online for the downtown area. The Belcher Street water tank was successfully repaired. It was just a small leak to be repaired, but the scheduled maintenance was completed at the same time when the tank was drained to replace the anodes and clean the floor system. It's been now back online for about 4 weeks and functioning as expected. Sanitary sewer utility, everyone knows, I guess, the yearly biological turnover at the regional sewage treatment plant in New Minas, owned and operated by the municipality of Kings, has caused some longer than normal odor issues in the Kentville and New Minas areas, depending on the wind direction. I've had several conversations with Kings County, and they have increased efforts by adding additional aeration and reseeding the first pond from the effluent of the 5th pond, which is the sort of the finished water before it would normally go out to the receiving water. And that has improved the issue, and we expect now that the steady weather has come and the turnover has happened. We'll see those odors certainly, hopefully, dissipate in the coming week or 2. And that is my report.
Thank you very much, Director Bell. And are there any questions for the director? Councillor Maxwell, please.
Thank you. Director Bell, there's just a couple of things I wanted to mention to you. I'm wondering if you've identified the Oakdean Avenue street from Exhibition Street to Wade Street for patch paving. It's only half of that street. The other half has been done for quite a while now, but it's quite bumpy along that one half.
It is on our list. I think there's some places there that we would actually mill out and then patch. We have some milling this year under the patch paving contract, where we don't usually have that line item for unit price, but we have a pricing on milling. And Oakdean's a busy street. I mean, it's not a main arterial, but it is a busy street. People do go through there frequently. We want to keep it to somewhat slow speed, so we don't want it too smooth, but I'm kidding. But seriously, it is on the list to do, and we'll see how much we can do with the budgeted amount that we have. But that'll be the follow-up weeks from after this week, once we finish hopefully the downtown and out to Park Street, which will cover the sort of the main main thoroughfare of town and then go to both of subdivisions around and places like Belcher and certainly Oak Dean and beyond. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. That's great. I know that the men were up and looked at the catch basin on Caldwell Avenue and repaired it with cement. But I don't know if you realize that another hole has opened up there and is growing. So I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, we have seems like we've got extra catch basins this year. We've replaced several and they seem to be all that same vintage of a different sort of a inferior quality material that was used back in the 80s or even earlier, and they're all seem to be coming due to their replacement year in the last year or two. So that one I will check on that, Councillor Maxwell, and make the works crew aware that it's progressing beyond the last repair. So
Yeah,
you.
the last repair was good, but unfortunately it's opened up a
growing.
new one.
Yeah, it's the same catch basin though, correct?
The same catch basin, yes.
Thank you.
And the final thing is, I had a citizen stop me today, actually, and then I took a walk up Cornwallis Street, up the hill there, past the light, and the tree branches along that sidewalk are
Low.
in the way of people who are walking. So
Yes.
I just wanted to point that out, that maybe sometime they could go and trim those.
I was contacted as well, and I'm aware of certainly where it is, but we had that notice come through, I think through the web email portal last week. So
Great.
we'll be doing some trimming here shortly.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Bell, just curious, I had a citizen email me today about the smell and about the sewer. Is there a fix for that? I know it's related to changes in the weather and stuff like that, but is there something that that can be done that this won't keep happening?
I don't know of any magical fix, Councillor Gerard, but I do know, if they're going to avoid it, they need to start remedies sooner in the spring before that it happens, whether that's reseeding, bringing the water back from the fifth cell to the first cell where the odors really are occurring, and adding, the extra floating aerators. Perhaps that needs to happen, a month before they're doing it. I don't want to, pretend I know how to operate that plant because I guess I certainly don't. I'm familiar with it from my previous, life in consulting, but I don't know all the intricacies of that plant. They are, this year's capital plan is to desludge that cell, and it looks like that may be moving forward. Nothing's 100% sure. It came in originally over budget, and they're working on negotiating with the contractor to get it down to something that they can fit into the capital budget. But that's a big expenditure to desludge that cell. They hope that will help. I guess it will help with the phasing, which includes new aeration equipment for that cell that needs to be desludged first. So it's a mixture of things, a combination of upgrades that need to happen there over the next as many as probably 3 or 4 construction seasons. But it's a phased in approach to upgrade the ponds that really are those 2 ponds are now approaching 30 years old, and the plant itself is more like 43 or 4 years old.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Maxwell, did you have something else? Okay, very good. Thank you, Director Bell. And we move on now to the CAO report to council.
Thank you.
Hi, Sandra.
Yes, sorry.
Mayor Snow, I apologize. I did have a question for Dave, if that's possible.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, has there been any progress or plans for the lights on the bridge?
Yes, somewhat. Councillor Huntley did have some responses back from the province. Just wanted some clarity, I guess, on what they would allow us to do where it isn't our structure. When they built the bridge, I was under the impression, I guess, that there was at some point in the early stages plans to have lighting. They tell me whether that's correct, that isn't the case. They never did plan to, but I can't totally confirm or deny that, but they suggested, if lighting was added, it would need to be sort of on the approaches, whether those are poles, wooden or metal. So I've looked into having some lighting put at both ends of the bridge. Ideally, it would be nice if we could light up really the sort of the four corners, if you will, and have the poles high enough that would illuminate the bridge with some LED lighting. So that's what I have some inquiries in now to a road lighting specialist that I hope to hear back from soon. We've got money budgeted in this year's capital to do well, hopefully enough, and I'll know more certainly by next CAC meeting.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Director Bell, you know those drawings that you often see developers where they show you mature trees and all of this?
Yes.
When we got our first drawing of the bridge, it had these really nice kind of ornate lights on it. So
Yeah.
I think our developer probably still owes us something on that one for
Yeah,
the fire on it. Councillor Maxwell, please.
Thank you. Just one follow-up, Director Bell. I did ask you about those unsightly poles going up, those steel poles or whatever they are for power going up Mountain View, James, and there's some up in Palmer subdivision that are rusting. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Nova Scotia Power, or do we have any kind of solution for that?
Somewhat, and it's funny. You're talking about the actual light, the steel light, light standards poles, the tall poles. So they are Nova Scotia Power property, and I actually had a citizen that lives in a different subdivision, which I thought were in better shape, kind of call and concerned why they were being replaced there in his own subdivision. I don't need to specify the subdivision, but it was neither of those two locations that you mentioned, and I tend to agree with him that for whatever reason the NS Power was in that particular location elsewhere in town, changing some out. Again, it's also a 40-year-old subdivision, and they probably they have to assess and rate their assets and know which ones are worse. But it did seem to be strange that those ones were ahead of some of the other ones that appear to be, at least in visually, in poorer condition. But perhaps there were other structural reasons why these ones were done first. But I have asked and haven't had a whole lot of luck or feedback with any kind of a plan on when they will be done. But they are Nova Scotia Power's assets to replace. But the sequence is a bit, choice of where to go is a bit strange. I don't quite understand their logic, but they must have a good one.
Thank you. And maybe perhaps we could direct the citizens' concerns directly to Nova Scotia Power, which might spur them along.
Perhaps, yeah, for sure. And we can try that approach.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I think this is all, Director Bell.
Okay.
All right, moving right on to CAO Trope, please.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So my report tonight, just first update the provincial health order, of course. The town hall is now reopened with phase 1 moving along. The directions around phase 2 are shortly coming. As I understand, we're moving into that zone later. I believe I saw today, later this week. The budget, as soon as we can get folks together in a room, we're going to be carrying the grants meeting for council. So as soon as we can accommodate that, we will. But also on the subject of grants, the town itself, we've been actively writing grants to the province and to the federal government with regards to anything and everything we can leverage with regards to the budget that's been approved this year. And then you're hearing about dribs and drabs of those that are being processed and coming through where we're successful. So obviously, as we move through this, if there's an opportunity to reprofile any money, particularly within the capital budget area, we'd be bringing that back to council for consideration, kind of if there's the next things on the list. You heard Director Bell in a conversation with Councillor Maxwell around catch basins. while that may not be the most interesting thing in the world to have discussions about, there is an overwhelming need to be looking at those, not just here in the town, but also the curbing in many of those areas. We certainly would like to be exploring the opportunity to look at moving beyond asphalt curbing into concrete curbing anywhere we can, just for the longevity and the ability for that to do the job that we want it to do. So again, these are conversations we'll come back to council with if we can free up resources, and whether it's through grants or other things coming in under budget. Accessibility committee, obviously, as it switches gears, we are doing our best to make sure that we have public awareness around the plan and the information that's out there. Intermunicipal service agreements, meetings continue. We're into much of the financial components of this in our conversations. And so we'll be meeting again later this week. And internally, one of the things that I've started doing is we have a number of older policies that are on the books. Just to give you an example, the town has a CAO policy, but at the same time, the Municipal Government Act has kind of an overarching list of items that are actually in the provincial law versus into bylaw. So we're going to do an attempt to clean up these kinds of things and bring them forward to council. So anything that is kind of that 10, 20-year-old policy that needs to be cleaned up. So this is my chance to shout out to Jennifer West for all the work that she's been doing and helping bringing the new CAO along on some of these things that really need to be refreshed and cleaned up. So we'll bring that back to council as soon as we get that completed. And as discussed earlier, the police chief's position, the competition for that closed. I'm just going to be putting that into a vetting grid that I'll have an opportunity to come in and meet with the commission on, and then we can move forward with the interview process there. There is some work underway around street renaming, and we have a note later in the agenda here tonight, so I'll leave it till that point to discuss. And then we have a list of virtual meetings that have been going on, so I've attempted to capture most of those. The other piece I'll mention to council is we do have a number of folks in the development community who have been reaching out, and whether it's around projects that they're underway and they're looking at kind of where they're going next, but also we have a number of folks who've been reaching out around everything from conversations around sewer and water and so on. So the development community is active out there. And I mean, it's indicative of what we saw with some of the land sales that have been happening here in the town as well. So I'll stop there and take questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, CO Troke and Councillor Maxwell. Oh, Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I maybe should have asked this when David was speaking. I'll put this to Dan. And actually, it's a good thing Rachel's here. When David was talking about the bridge and the lighting, what happened, or where are we with the boat launch under the bridge or beside the bridge?
Well, I'm going to have to defer that to someone because I do not have an update on that at this time, Councillor Gerard. Not sure. Does anyone else have an update on where that might be?
Yep, I can speak to that. That project was taken off of the capital list and never returned last year, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. No other questions for the CAO? Going once, twice, three times? All right, we have a motion to accept the staff reports as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Deputy and Councillor York for the second. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that staff reports be accepted as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we move on to our unfinished business. And our first item of unfinished business is Council's municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw amendment. There are two matters in this recommendation for consideration. The request to rezone the land in question to C1 by the developer. And the second is the council initiative to permit multi-unit residential in C2 highway commercial zone. CAO Troke, did you or Director Gentleman wish to provide council with more information regarding the options we have on this matter?
Thank you, Mayor Snow, and I'm going to defer to Director Gentleman on this because she is certainly the expert to speak to it. But essentially, we have kind of an overlapping purpose here. And so there's two particular items that we're going to be looking for some direction on just to expedite getting this work done over the next little bit. So I'll turn this over to Director Gentleman.
Thank you, CAO Troke, and thank you, Council. So I'll just read the report that I've provided to you earlier this week. Again, this is the initial request was Council's request to consider amendments to the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw to allow multi-unit residential within the C2 zone. This came out of the public participation meeting that we had, and Council had asked staff to go back and come back with options for the amount of commercial space that should be considered in the C2 zone within a multifamily residential development on the ground floor. So a bit of history on this. The origin of this came back a little over a year ago when ZAP, an architecture and planning consulting company, had on behalf of Nova Scotia Retirement Living Inc. had applied for a concurrent amendment to the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw to rezone 3 acres of land on the corner of Park Street and Shyla in the C2 zone, to rezone that to a high density residential zone. A staff report was prepared for CAC that went to them on January 11th, 2021 with a recommendation to deny the request. However, council did want to take that out to the public to try to get some feedback from folks to find out how they felt about residential development within the C2 zone. We were working on putting together a public participation meeting. However, the applicant at the time had withdrawn their request for the rezoning on January 25th, 2021. During this time, the planning department were preparing several housekeeping amendments to the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw to provide clarification to certain policies and to include additional regulations that were mistakenly left out during the adoption of the planning documents in 2019. As part of this mini review, council requested staff to include additional amendments to allow multi-unit residential, including some component of ground floor commercial use within the C2 zone. Staff did advise council at the time that simply just rezoning the property to a different zone to allow multifamily residential needed to have some discussion about how much commercial use we wanted to have in that, because the application, the initial application only showed a very small percentage of ground floor commercial. It was actually less than 6%. And also that if this application was to move ahead to help facilitate this particular development, additional uses had to be added to the permitted uses within the C2 zone, including the hair salon. That was the 6% of the ground floor area that the applicants have indicated that they wish to have in their development. So at a special council meeting held by council in April 21st, 2021, staff reviewed with council the various housekeeping amendments, and further to council's request that they those amendments to the C2 zone to allow multifamily residential and ground floor. This information was forwarded to a public participation meeting for comment on May 20th, 2021. And there was no comment provided by the public at that time. As a result, council informed staff they wish to proceed with amendments to allow the multi-unit residential within the C2 zone with the component of commercial on the ground, and further directed staff to come back with some options regarding what percentage on the ground floor should be dedicated to commercial uses. And further, council must also turn their mind to the type of commercial uses they anticipate seeing on the ground floor of a multifamily residential in the C2 zone. A hair salon, which has been proposed in a previous rezoning application, is not the type of commercial use intended within the C2 zone. With that in mind, council must also understand that if you wish to add a hair salon to the permitted uses section of the land use bylaw, that would be permitted within any 2C zone within the town, not specific to that one property. Council made it clear that the changes to allow multifamily within the C2 zone was to be broadly adhered to all C2 properties within the town. So, so in summary, I have to say the council continues to maintain the position that multifamily residential and the highway commercial is contrary to the intent of the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw currently in place. And however, council still wanted to look at some options to look at if multifamily is permitted within the C2 zone, how much commercial space should be provided. And we can pick numbers out of the air, but I guess we just have to be a little realistic. I looked at different areas within the province and what folks were using. We're requiring for commercial space in as close to a similar zone as our C2. Not everybody has the same type of zone, so it's really difficult to say, well, this is what everybody's doing, or this is the common number that should be used. But essentially, I think if council wanted to go forward, they should either look at 100%, 50%, or 25%. But whatever component, whatever percentage of commercial space you wish to consider, it's also staff's recommendation that that be at the front of the building. And further to those options, because there are elements within the earlier proposal for a specific type of commercial use that's not currently permitted within the C2 zone. Hair salons and retail would also have to be part of that amendment. Now, since writing this report, we'll go to the next page of my report, which is the update. We did receive a new application from Stonemount on behalf of Nova Scotia Retirement Inc. to rezone, spot rezone the portion of land that they want to buy on the corner of Park and Shyla to go from C2 to C1. But here are the issues with that. The general commercial C1 zone is specific to the downtown. If you look at policy C4 within the municipal planning strategy, it's clear that that zone is intended to be applied to the downtown core only. So applying this zone to a piece of land on Park Street would contravene the planning strategy policy C4. Second, the general commercial C1 zone only requires ground floor commercial uses in specific areas of the downtown. If you refer to the map that was attached to the report, it's primarily just what I refer to as the circle, parts of River Street, Cornwallis, Aberdeen, and Main Street that requires 100% commercial on the ground floor. Other areas of the C1 zone in the downtown do not require the commercial component. So if the applicant were to move ahead with C1 zone and the C2 zone, there's no guarantee and there's no requirement to have any commercial component at all. And lastly, considering council's direction to ensure that some reasonable commercial ground floor be compulsory in any residential development within C2 zone, then rezoning from C2 to C1 is not going to provide you that opportunity. So I think addressing this issue might be prudent first. And I guess my question is whether or not council would like to move ahead with this application. It just seems contrary. It'll come back with a negative recommendation because it's not the intent of the the C1 zone is only intended for the downtown area. So it will come back with a negative recommendation. So that's the one question. And if we could maybe address that first, then we can go back to the consideration of multifamily residential and what component of commercial space you might want to see in that afterwards.
All right, Director Gentleman, thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. Director or CAO Troke, did you want to reframe or frame this up for us?
No, thank you. And Director Gentleman's done a great job of outlining both the history and kind of where we are. So really there's kind of two pieces here, just to kind of try and summarize that. Essentially, and I've had a number of conversations both with the developer, but also had other developments in the community talking about their thoughts around, commercial component. So really, the Stone Mountain is looking at this as kind of a plan A and a plan B. So you've got kind of the C1 option and the C2 option. And I think Director Gentleman is framed up that right now, it is kind of like you have dual purposes going, but it would almost be, I think from an overall perspective, best to table the C1 application and kind of put it in, we'll call it a holding pattern to see if and where the C2 zoning would come about. And with that, remember with the C2, this is not just about one property, it's about multiple properties that have an opportunity here. There are housing challenges that exist in this town. And so, part of that piece would be looking at what that means and what the implications would be. So yes, there's a commercial component and a residential conversation that needs to happen. I think the parameters that Director Gentleman has put out here is just trying for us to get a feel for, is this a more commercial conversation or a less commercial conversation, so we can frame this up and agreed that it seems to be that we're talking about the front of the building as a commercial opportunity. So consider, do we want to move ahead with that C1 request or kind of table it so that C2, we complete the work on that and then get some direction on kind of more or less on the commercial side for these so we can move that work ahead.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Gerard, I see your hand up. Do you have a question with regards to the report, or can we move on the CAO's recommendation for C1 first?
No, we can move on.
Okay, thank you. Solicitor, I see your hand is up.
I just had a question to confirm the intended procedure here. So Director Gentleman, if there is a complete application for a land use bylaw amendment, you now have a period of time within which to address that. That's a significant period of time. But I just wanted to understand what it is the town has in front of it right now.
Okay, so we just basically have a letter of request. There's still a lot of information that we still need to get. We need the legal description of the piece of land, all those other elements that were part of the initial application form that we haven't received yet. So we have a letter.
So this sounds like it's more of an expression of interest by the developer as to what staff's position might be on the issue.
It could be, but I think.
Okay, well, so my recommendation is that staff need to clarify that, because if the applicant believes it has placed an application before the town, then it starts a time frame. And just so council understands, if at the end of that time frame you haven't addressed it, they're deemed to be refused, and at that point they have the right to appeal to the UARB. So we just have to be clear what it is the applicant expects that they've placed before the town.
So their application, though they're only asking for rezoning, there's municipal planning strategy policies that need to be changed. So
oh yes, but my point, Director Gentleman, is that if they believe that their application is complete
No, they
pursuant to
don't.
the existing municipal planning strategy. Then it comes to council with your recommendation. Your recommendation sounds like we know what that is. And if we anticipate the council follows your recommendation, they would, then the application would be denied and the applicant could then appeal. But I understand you're saying the only way this moves forward is with a concurrent MPS amendment, but the applicant doesn't have to apply for the MPS amendment if they believe they can fit it within the
Well, I
existing
suppose,
MPS.
yeah. So, yeah, so I suppose they could appeal the decision, whatever that decision might be. But because there is an element of the MPS that needs to be amended that they haven't even addressed, then.
So that's all I'm saying is we just need to be clear what it is. So at this point, it's as I understand it, staff will communicate to the applicant that you don't have a complete application. If they wish to bring a complete application forward, then you'll deal with it at that time.
Right, so they have been advised that it is incomplete, but they were also advised that it would be going to council tonight or CAC to see if they want to move forward with the application.
Yeah, I think that particular question is premature. If you
Okay.
don't have a complete application, there's nothing for CAC to consider and make a recommendation to council about. It's good context for the rest of the discussion, but because we're in a very particular procedure that's mandated by the MGA, I think we have to be very careful about how we process an application.
CAO Troke.
So I think based on that, Mayor Snow and Council, certainly Director Gentleman and myself can communicate that back to the developer that at this point we have an incomplete application and that we can essentially at this point in time, I guess the key component of this would be that there is a sense that there is a need if this is to proceed to look at a potential change to the MPS. And it would be at this point in time, let's complete the other component of what's going on before we would proceed with that consideration.
All right, thank you, CAO Troke. So therefore, we have no action on the C1 matter, and we will leave that with staff, and it will return to us as required when we have all of the information. Deputy Mayor, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Sorry, I've made a few notes on this, so I'm just trying to navigate it a little bit. So as I understand it, we would be tabling their C1 application because they don't have a complete application to submit as of yet, to Solicitor Mattard's point. But part 2 of that is we then move forward with a view to look at the C2 and the options for that around commercial space, whatever that means, 150, 25, front, back, whatever. But were Stone Mount aware that this was coming before council around the C2? I'm just curious as to why it switched to a C1, and perhaps that's not a discussion that we can have at this juncture because of the incomplete application. But
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. And so, yes, so Stoneman is looking at this as kind of a 2-track process. And so we're aware of the conversation and the decisions to be made still around C2, but also we're pursuing this other piece basically as kind of 2 different tracks that along the way, whichever one of those tracks would allow them in their development to move forward as close of a project as they had hoped to do. So I think this was, tonight was, A, yes, they were aware, but B, this was kind of more around from a clarity perspective for just staff to be able to drill down kind of option A, option B, where are we going to put our emphasis, because the C2 consideration is bigger than just this project. And it may, in fact, at the end of the day, still, depending where council decides to go, could allow for a very direct avenue, or B, if it doesn't, then let's look at where the other one would need to go. But it still could need considerable, not just consideration, but it might also mean that additional changes if that were to be explored. So aware and kind of they were looking at this as a plan A and a plan B, and no guarantees either one of them will get them to where they want to be.
Okay, so thank you for that. And then, but you did say, and considering their application is incomplete, but it was to spot zone that particular piece of property?
It's just, yes, it's the piece of property that they
Yep.
wish to buy.
I realize that.
Essentially
Okay.
a spot zoning.
Okay, thank you for that. That clarifies it for me.
Solicitor?
Yeah, so just to respond to Deputy Mayor's first comment, you're not tabling anything. There's simply nothing to address with respect to the C1 issue. Now, that's not to say that CAC can't consider all of the issues, all of the planning issues here, and how you would like to see staff move forward, whether that's C1, C2, a mix. This is really about what uses do you want to permit, no matter what you call it. You could call it Z10, right? It's what do you want to allow and where do you want to allow it? It doesn't have to fit a cookie cutter approach. You've heard from staff. Staff needs some direction so that they know what to ultimately bring forward to council and to the public. And so this is as good a place as any for me to remind you that at this point it's discussion, it's not decision. Council has to keep an open mind around these issues because we're talking MPS amendments, no matter how you move forward here. And so you will be going to the public on those draft amendments when the time comes. And although you can have opinions, you need to have an open mind until you hear from the public, debate all the issues, and then ultimately make the decision in second reading. But staff can't staff can't, they can't move forward in a vacuum. They need some direction on the policy issues and the types of policy issues that you want to address and the types of things you want to accommodate. I think that's fair, isn't it, Director Gentleman?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yes.
Okay, Solicitor, thank you very much. Councillor Gerard, I see your hand is up. Was there something about what we've just heard that you wanted to add to, or were you looking to jump into this right away?
No, I'm wondering if we've had several discussions on this, and I think Director Gentleman knows sort of the direction that at least the majority of council wants to move in. And she's got the options up there, and she's the expert. She's been doing this for a long time. Do you have a recommendation? Do you have, any ideas on how we could make this work that it's amicable for everyone involved?
Well, I am coming from the perspective of the planning documents that we have at hand. And the C2 zone is clearly, was clearly written in a way that residential development was not the intended use for these areas. If council wishes to proceed with that, making this work in one way or the other, I would suggest staying away from rezoning it to C2, from C2 to C1, and then concentrate on allowing multifamily residential within the C2 zone and how much commercial space you want within that. Now, back in April, I sent council kind of an update when I was doing the math on what they were providing within their proposal and what they're planning on building. The commercial component is just under 6%. So if we're trying to help facilitate a development, this isn't going to work. Or we just allow multifamily residential with no commercial component at all. And that's going to be across the board, across the whole C2 zoning designation. I think that's important to keep in mind, because we can go through this whole process and this whole project and say, okay, multifamily residential, 25% of the ground floor area to be allocated to commercial uses in the front of the building. Their commercial space that they've allocated is on the side, and it's 6%. So we need to think about that.
All right, so Director Gentleman has given us her options that kind of fit into the nice square box that we need to have. So what I would like to do is go around the board, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Multi-use or multi-unit residential use, yes or no? Permitted uses other than C2, and the component mixed use of the commercial component mixed use. So Bev has given, Director Gentleman has given us, I'm going to say 3 choices here that kind of fit a nice square box, but if you have something else to throw on the board, then by all means, I would say do that. So one of the things that I wrote in the kind of my feedback to this was that I would really like to see our MPS and our LUB kind of change in what we have in the permitted uses included in commercial zones. Now, I like the way downtown we've kept it very, very boutique-like and small shops and stuff, but I really think that our C2 zone is where we could be commercial on steroids, I guess is the way that I would term it. That we permit any of the commercial uses that we have anywhere else in our other commercial zones to be able to be in that C2 zone. Because if you look at the map that's on page 1 of 4 or page 83, Director Gentleman has been good enough to highlight the C2 zones. And if you look at all of those C2 zones, they are really great zones to have an economic impact on the area that they're in. So if you think about our business park, there's over 2,000 employees there on a daily basis. And there's not a restaurant, there's not a place to grab a cup of coffee unless you hop in your car and either go to Colebrook or come all the way back into downtown Kentville. So imagine the commercial boom that's there. Plus the fact that we have 3 living areas where there's beautiful development that could make use of this commercial zone. So anyway, I just throw that out there to you for consideration. So my intent is to go through, and I'm going to ask you whether you want the multi-residential use will be the first question. The second question is permitted uses. And then the third question will be the commercial component mix. So Deputy Mayor.
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay.
Question 1, multi-unit res permitted in the C2 zone, correct?
Yes.
Yes, would be my answer.
Okay.
Permitted uses in the C2 zone other than commercial. So you're looking for the component of the commercial piece that I'd like. Is that what you mean?
No, that's right now. C2 does not permit hair salons, but yet they are permitted in a C1 zone.
Correct. So I would be comfortable permitting any commercial use.
Okay. And next is the component. So the percentage.
Struggle a bit with that. 25% frontage. And I will say I struggle a bit with the 25 to 50, but I'm going to go with 25, and I'm only one person.
Okay, very good. Councillor Gerard.
I would pick exactly the way Deputy Mayor picked. I would say yes to a residential component. I would say anything that's permissible in a C1 zone would be permitted. And the percentage, I would go with 25% ground floor. I would also take the director's recommendation and say that it has to be highway frontage.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley. Sorry.
To the first, sorry, the multi-residential with commercial, I would say yes.
Okay.
That's number 1. Number 2, I would say anything.
Okay.
Permitted uses. And number 3, I would like to see a mix of 50%.
50%, okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Multi-use residential, I guess I'm going to go swimming against the stream.
Okay.
I'm going to say no, and just to say I feel, the reason I'm saying no is that I feel a tremendous, at the moment, irresponsibility fiscally to give up that C2 zone. And that's what's holding me back. I feel that we're giving up something that we're giving up our C2 zone to something that could go elsewhere within the town limits. And I just think down the road, I feel tremendous fiscal irresponsibility for that. But if we do go with this, then I would say any commercial use.
Okay.
But I would like to see 100% and from the front.
Okay, thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. Yes to multi-residential with the housing crisis. I think it just is responsible from that angle. I have some reservations on C1 and C2, and it might be that I don't fully appreciate all of the differences right now between C1 and C2 and what changes that would impact. So I guess, yeah, any usage, I suppose, with 50% highway frontage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Xavier.
Thank you. I'm going to say yes to the first one. I just want to throw in there that this is a hard project to look at because I know I've looked at the floor plans and they're not your typical 2-bedroom apartment or 1-bedroom apartment. They're almost like a bachelor pad. So they're unique, I guess, in what they're offering. My next question would be, or the next answer would be any service or retail. I'm okay with that. The third thing though, I think that the whole ground floor on any of these should be 100%, whether it's front or back. So it should be totally 100% commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. And my option, as I wrote out, is that multi-use residential, all permitted uses included in all other commercial zones, and the commercial component of the mixed-use building shall include the ground floor fronting on the street highway, and it must be no less than 20% of the ground floor area. So mine would be the 25%. So with all of this information, Director Gentleman, does this give you enough information to do something, come back to us?
I can certainly come back with, well, I need to have the number. I think to go forward, I need to have a number, whether it's 25%, 50%, or 100%. I need that from council.
Well,
And
then there's
the land use bylaw.
There's 3 votes for 25%. There is 2 votes for 100% and 2 votes for 50%.
So if I could, Mayor Snow, so what I would say is that we needed some direction. We have some general direction. And I recognize that what's going to happen is we'll refine this piece down so that then we'll get to the real nitty-gritty conversation at council as to kind of an option A and an option B, I think is where we'll have to go, because obviously there's some differences, and so maybe it just needs to be framed up with kind of where either of those variables go. So it may be there's a 50 to 100, maybe there's a 50 to 25, and something happens in there.
Director, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, I really need to have direction on this percentage amount. Because based on the way that the strategy is already written, the C2 zone was never drafted to be residential. So we're gonna look at residential, then I would be moving towards, okay, residential is fine, we'll go ahead with that. But at a minimum, I'm leaning towards at least 50 up to 100% ground floor residential. If that's not the wishes of council, then I can come back with what they want. Now, there's two sides of this. Any of these options will not facilitate Stone Mound. They have 6% and that's it. That's what they have in their plans. It's a seniors housing facility. It's not affordable housing like a lot of people seem to be thinking that it is. However, by allowing multifamily residential within the C2 zone will allow for other developers to come in with different housing options, affordable housing, new housing options for various types of people. So I think we really need to focus on that percentage, what it is that you really would like to see. Do we want any at all? Is addressing the housing crisis the most important thing right now? And leave it up to developers to decide whether or not they want any amount of resident or the commercial on the ground floor. If there is a desire for ground floor commercial, I really, no, I don't want to come back to another meeting and give you the same options again.
Understood. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I have to agree with Director Gentleman. When I look at this again or any building there, I don't think it would be very appealing to see, you know, two shops in the front with people living on each side of them. I don't think that's very aesthetically pleasing. I mean, that's a prime property there. I don't think any developer is going to have a problem leasing out the whole main floor to commercial. I'm going to stick with 100%. I just think it would look better, it would fit better. It is a commercial area. So when you kind of got the best of both worlds, you have the residential upstairs and you've got the whole main floor is commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to reiterate again, we are talking about the C2 highway commercial zone. Like, so we're talking about that zone. We're not specifying, this is not germane or specific to Stone Mound. So I think the fact that whatever they're coming back with to us with, whether it's rezoned to C1, I think we've established that their application is incomplete at this juncture. And so how I'm looking at this is from, you know, C2 for the entire town of Kempville, not just specific to Stone Mound. And the fact that they only have 6% commercial included in their plan at this juncture, it's not really weighing in my decision. So I'm not thinking about that specific to Stone Mound. We just happen to have them interested in that property. But I think by making some of these changes that we're discussing tonight, it opens it up to a whole host of developers. Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Deputy Mayor Savage's point, that was my thought process as well. Is that the C2 does have a component out by the business park, but it does have land up by the community college as well. And when we're in a housing crisis that we are in, I think opening up any area to allow for more residential purposes would be best suited for what we need right now. And the 50% is a minimum, correct? We voted on like a minimum. It's not a maximum. I'm asking for clarification.
At least, that's
yeah,
correct.
Okay, so I think 50% as a minimum is a good start. I would obviously like to see 100, but I don't know that we can always get that. I don't know. Anyway, so that was my thought process on the whole thing, was that I'm not making decisions based on one group's interest, but rather what would be beneficial for the town as a whole.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I still struggle with this in that we have a lot of residential land in town, and C2, this is the only C2 land that we have on a high traffic road in town. And so what we're proposing is to give up that C2 land for residential when we have residential lands available in town. So it's not as if the housing crisis really should be factoring in here. We have land available in town for housing. So why are we giving up? And that's what I don't understand is, why are we giving up our C2 land for residential when we have lots of land in the town for residential. And that's what I struggle with. And nobody is kind of addressing that issue. And I kind of like an answer for that, because maybe I would change my mind. But when I'm looking at lots of residential land in the town for building these types of facilities, why are we giving up our only C2 land on the only major highway, high traffic highway that we have? And I don't have an answer to that question.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that I agree with Deputy Mayor Savage and Councillor York. The commercial component will be dictated by the market. So the market in the C2 out by the industrial park will surely be a different commercial market than the commercial component up in the lands up by King's Tech. You know, these developers that are gonna come in any development. This is not developer specific. This is you know, this council would like to make a change to accommodate a housing crisis, and you know, hopefully increase some commercial usage in land that has been sitting for a long time, especially the stuff out in the industrial park. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York, did you have something else you want to add?
I do, so sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if we could get, and I apologize, Director Gentleman, because I don't fully understand the impact of changing from C1 to C2 and the impact that might have on our downtown, because presently our downtown is entirely C1. If we allow for C1 to keep spreading out, does that negatively impact the current C1 district at all?
No, it doesn't negatively impact the C1 zone, but the C1 zone was drafted for the downtown area.
Okay.
Negatively impacting the C2 zone and the intended use of the C2 zone.
Okay.
And so you just, you know, yeah, I guess that would be the question, the answer to that. So, yeah. So I'll let you continue, and then I'll have one last comment.
If I may, Mayor Snow, may I change my any commercial type to remain at C2?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Was there anything else? Councillor York? Okay. All right. So I realize that perhaps my statement was that I stated that the commercial component of the mixed-use building shall include the ground floor fronting the street, and it must be no less than 25%. So one of the things that Councillor Zabian pointed out is that you could have 25%, but then have apartments. Well, that would not be my intent. My intent would be that it would be basically, and I hate to use this term, but basically a strip mall on the front of this building, and there would be no residential component facing the road on the bottom floor. So is that even possible to say that, or to term it, or to put it out there? Go ahead. And I am directing it to you, Director.
So because this all precipitated from a particular application, I tried to take the footprint of their proposal and look at it and say, how would you incorporate 100% frontage commercial use?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the footprint that they have proposed, it would be very difficult to do, because the west side of their proposal was only the length of a probably 20-25 feet, the length of a hotel room, because there's no kitchenettes in this particular development. So in this, to make it work for them, I don't think you can do that. So I focused more on whatever percentage of commercial use you would like to see within a development It would have to be one, it would have to be in the front. It would have to be highway frontage, but not necessarily the entirety of the building would be able to necessitate. Because if you took, say, 1,000 square feet of the ground floor and you said it's got to be 25%, depending on the footprint of that building, you might only have a 10-foot swath of land or building footprint that would be dedicated to commercial. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I don't like that answer. Because that's not my intent. My intent is that whole front, which means a minimum of, so that if they turned the building like the long way and just made like the short side on the highway, that still wouldn't give the full 25%. I want the long part of the building facing the highway and that entire bottom to be commercial. And I don't know that I can get to that by saying a percentage, because I think that you are the one who are going to have to say to whoever's there that their store frontage has to be the entire length of the building that's on Highway 1.
But if the total depth of the building is, say, only, I wish I had the plans in front of me, is only, let's see, say 50 feet, say even 100 feet, then the minimum would probably be, like, you'd only have 50 feet of potential ground floor area. And in this particular case, it was less than that. So yeah, I know what you're trying to get at, but depending on what the product is and depending on what somebody wants to build, they may not be able to put 100% up front there without having to build more space in the back. If that makes sense.
It does, but it does.
I know.
I'll let someone else talk here. Councillor Xavier.
Thanks, Mayor Snow. I think you just nailed what I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago. That percentage number doesn't really mean anything, because somebody could take the skinny sliver at the end and put a hair salon in or a restaurant, and then you are going to have apartments. I don't see the fit of that there. So I'm going to stand, I've said it now twice, but I think the whole ground floor, especially in that one, and I'm not trying to spot zone, but that's in a commercial zone, and that really should be 100% commercial. It's the only way it's going to look nice. I mean, you don't want something out there that's unsightly. And as Director Gentleman expressed, this is not affordable housing. This particular project isn't. We encourage that. I hope we get lots of that in Kentville if any developers are watching, but this is not affordable housing. Thank you.
Solicitor?
Just in case this is comments helpful, as somebody else said earlier, if you look at this across the zone and focus less on this particular proponent, then a lot of these comments become easier to address, because we're now not trying to stick a square peg in a round hole, right? And so if your intention is that street frontage be commercial, and the end result of that is that it makes no sense for a development to be nothing but commercial on the ground floor, then that's the developer's issue and how they develop it. The concern that the director has on the drafting side is things like, how deep does that commercial have to be? Because I can see lots of ways to have your entire street frontage appear to be commercial, and most of it may simply be display, right? Nice clothing, Councillor Zebian. That may not actually be occupied space in behind. So there's you have to be really careful about this, and Director Gentleman wears both a development officer hat and a planner hat. The planner does the drafting, the development officer does the enforcement, and when she's doing the drafting, she has to think about the enforcement and how all this is going to work out at the end of the day. I just wanted to throw this out there based on the comments I'm hearing. A developer could go in there now and build a one-story building that's all commercial. If they go in there and build a four-story building and the main level's all commercial and the other 3 stories are all residential, have you obtained what it is that you're looking to obtain in the way of use? is that different? Now, I know from a planning perspective, there's potential conflict issues that you've hashed around before, but it sounds like you're past that. And this is, how do you, what methods might you employ to accommodate some residential, and how might those uses mix? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. And basically that's what Jeff said was what I was going to allude to was instead of you know, trying to fit a percentage on, we simply say road frontage has to be commercial. Now there again, the director of planning is the expert in this. So if we give her these details, hopefully she can come back, you know, in a couple weeks time or in a month's time and say, this is what we've come up with.
Claire's mud?
No.
Chum the water enough?
So, okay, so the direction then is to allow multifamily residential with highway frontage commercial, regardless of the amount of commercial percentage. Okay, so I can move ahead with that. But my question now is going to be, again, this is not going to help facilitate somebody else. So will we want to, so once an applicant, so these folks are going to have to come in with a completed application to spot zone the same piece of land that's allowing residential uses, but they're going to have to come in with a new application because this is not going to meet their needs. And we're willing to consider that new application.
Deputy Mayor?
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. But this is not germane to Stone Mount. And I know that Stone Mount intertwines with that. I understand that, but I am really looking at this from a perspective for the town in its entirety. All the C2 lands that there are, that having this option in any and all of one of those lands. So I'm trying to take Stone Mount actually out of it completely and look at what's in the best interest for the town and in terms of expanding the housing piece.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
CAO, do we need to add anything else to this?
No, and I'm fine, and I'm actually, I think that last component, the last conversation there by Deputy Mayor is important, is that what we're really doing is you're kind of creating, you know, pardon the analogy, but a foundation here that says, if this is what you want to do in a certain area, this is your starting point. And so appreciate that it's more than one property. And if it doesn't perfectly fit for someone, well, then they know where the benchmark is that they'll have to work to make it fit. If it doesn't, then we go to whatever other consideration they want to bring forward. And again, I want to thank Director Gentleman for all her efforts in trying to squeeze all the toothpaste into this tube. And I think really this is now, we'll sit down, come up with some language, come up with some thoughts around it. This conversation was really important to happen, though, to try and get everybody's thoughts so that we can try and bring this back into some kind of a concise document. So I think we're okay, and we'll be back.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to our next piece of old business, and that is the renaming of Cornwallis Street. And CEO Troke, did you want to chat about the report that you have submitted?
Absolutely. So this is an old piece of business that's kind of has been on the radar screen. So back in June of 2020, council moved a motion to rename Cornwallis Street. And then in July, the parameters around this were put together. They've been attached in this report. Of course, as we went into an election, the decision was made that we would kind of put a pause on this while we allowed everybody to regroup. In connection with that, there was conversations were going on between staff and the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative. And most of that was around capacity. They're heavily involved in a number of other park renamings and so on. And they've been great to kind of provide some information to us. And then we kind of come to that place where we're saying, okay, if we want to try and expedite this based on some of the resource constraints, we may need to look at kind of a little bit of a different process. So really what I'm suggesting here is kind of either one of two approaches. We can continue down the road, which is the original intent, which would be to stand up a committee. Or B, we could look at this from the accessibility committee already has a number of lenses within the plan that's been passed. That's not just around accessibility, but it's also about inclusiveness. And so as a bit of a starting point on this, would we want to consider utilizing that committee in order to do some of the work? Obviously, we'd still need to continue to be working with the First Nations community to make sure that we are getting this right. But that is a way for us to move this forward. So our piece tonight would be to look at those two. And then I guess lastly, if the decision would be that we wanted to expedite even more than that, was there a decision of council that they'd like to kind of just look at some names in the renaming process and try and expedite it going that way? So really it's, do we want to use the ad hoc approach that was originally designed? Do we want to look at the accessibility committee as kind of that ad hoc committee to review this? Or do we want to have a simpler, more direct approach on that?
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Zabian, I see your hand up, but I've got a couple calls for a biological break. So it is 8:48. If we can take 5 minutes and come back, I'd really appreciate that. So we'll take a break. Please take your cameras off and mute your All right, we're all back. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow, and thank you for that biological break. I just want to, I understand that that this motion was passed, and I know we need to make this change. I hope with the change that there's some education too on why we're changing it, because we never really learn, you know, changing a street name is great, but there should be some explanation on why, educating people. When I look at these options, I think that were prepared last July on the changing, and I mean, the ad hoc committee idea is great, but that's another 2 or 3 months down the line. And I look at wherever option 4 came from, where I mean, it's a quick change. I don't know who came up with the name Bridge Street. I actually like that. I think it's easy. It's welcoming to the new bridge, and it's just a simple change. I mean, to spend now 2 or 3 more months after almost a year, I mean, just get it done, in my opinion. I mean, that's time wasted in a way. I mean, I don't mean to say it's time wasted, but I mean, it's been a year now. And I definitely, I'm okay with picking a name, and just getting it done. I really, that name kind of resonates with me. It is the entrance to the bridge. And the other thing, as I said, I definitely think there needs to be an education piece on why we've changed it. We are better as one, and we need to learn from things like that. Thank you.
So Councillor Zabian, can I say that you are choosing option number 4?
Yes, you can say that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor York.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Zabian said, that education around why the name is where it is, why it is problematic, and why it was that we are changing it needs to happen. I don't know the best route for doing that other than just creating some joint publicity statements and working with our diversity and accessibility committees and getting that message out there. Absolutely. My hesitation around creating an online public participation campaign is that we end up with the British Bodie McBoatface, that we end up with a name that is not helpful or appropriate. So if that is an option, that there be some checks in place that prevent like Streety McStreet.
Councillor York, do you have a choice of 1 to 4?
I would go with number 1 with the accessibility committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I brought this up last term when we were discussing this, and there is an appropriate way to deal with these types of issues within the Indigenous community without insulting them. And it is the two-eyed seeing approach, which basically is involving Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities to come together and decide what needs to be done and how that needs to be done. And it's very, very important that the Indigenous voice is brought to the table so they can tell their story. Us running ahead and naming a street is not the way that reconciliation is done. Again, it's us taking it into our hands and doing what we want. And that is not the way that reconciliation is set up. And I think it's incredibly important that we ask our Indigenous communities here in the Valley how they would like to see this done, if they would like to see it done, or do they want something else done? And so I definitely think this should go to committee, and I think the accessibility committee is probably the right one to send it to.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Councillor York, did you want to speak again? Okay, Deputy Mayor, did you want to weigh in on this matter?
Yeah, absolutely. No, my choice would be number 1. I really think that it should go back to the accessibility committee. And I think to Councillor York's and Zabian's and Maxwell's, I mean, I think it's important that there's some good dialogue around there. I know that CEO Trocas said that the folks that he reached out to, that there wasn't a lot of response or time at this juncture, but maybe through the accessibility committee, there may be some other representations that we can tap into so that we're respectful from all directions. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Yeah, sorry. Here we go. Yes, I'm number one. Send it back to the people that are sort of doing not sort of the same thing, but they're engaging the right people who know who to engage and get some feedback. Yes, absolutely, number one.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Huntley.
I'm with number one.
Okay. Did you want to speak to that, or are you happy with that?
Actually, I'm quite happy with that. I think it's all about respect, you know, with First Nations Committee. And I think if it's all about education, I think that's definitely one way that we can educate ourselves and learn more.
Excellent, thank you. And my selection is number one as well. I really like the approach that the Accessibility Committee has given us, and it looks like it will give us a nice consistent approach throughout the entire town, so that we're not just looking at a single item, but that we're truly making our whole town more inclusive. So we have six ones. Is that enough direction, CAO Troke, to move forward on this, or did you need a motion or a recommendation from us, or is direction good enough?
I'm fine with direction. I mean, what we really will do is then get a report back for council's consideration to make the decision.
Okay, perfect, perfect. All right, so we're moving on to our next piece of business under old business, and that is the Robinson property redevelopment. So if we were all together in a room, this would make a lot more sense. So I'm just going to talk through it just to get us all situated. So Councillor Zabian, you have requested to bring a personal matter before this council. I will ask that you excuse yourself from the table and proceed with your presentation to council as the owner of the property in question under the business name Mike's Clothing. Further, that you have declared a conflict of interest on this matter, limiting your interaction with council and its decision-making on this property. So the time is 9:01 for the minutes. Members of council, Mr. Zabian will proceed with his request to council. Subsequent to the presentation, members of council will be provided with the opportunity to clarify details and ask questions of Mr. Zabian on his request. Prior to proceeding to a motion for consideration of the request, I would ask that CAO Troke frame this request for council. Mr. Zabian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So as everyone's aware, I purchased the former Robinson property back in November of 2019. The pandemic quickly started, or shortly thereafter. And at that time, shortly thereafter, I had spoken with former CAO Kelly Rice. And because of the pandemic and ongoing issues, the deadline to have the footings in was extended until the fall of 2020, so on October 30th. We then went into more pandemic, which everybody in the world has, and we extended the footings until June 30th. On April 13th, my plans were submitted to the town of Canfield, to our planning director, and I did pay my $1,500, my receipts right here, which you all have access to. So that's gone to the county. As you know, Canfield, we don't employ an inspector here, unfortunately, and we're actually at the mercy of him. So I reached out to him, I want to say the end of April, and he had just started to dig into them, and he asked for a couple of more forms. So I went back to Equilibrium Engineering in town here, who's covering all that for me. They submitted them to the inspector, and he went through them again, and because the footings, I want them in by June 30th. On May 25th, and I have all the emails if you'd like to see them, he came back and said, you know what, you need to have a geotechnical study done. So I then went out to find someone who does that. There was a gentleman in Port Williams who's retired now, did find somebody in Bedford. I'm waiting for him. And on Thursday, which was just a couple of days ago, I reached out to the inspector again on an unrelated issue with this project, and he came back with another email that CEO Troke has, and he said that his workload is quite heavy. He's going to hopefully dig into my file again, which would be the third time, I believe, and he has a few more questions he'd like to dive into with a conference call with myself, the engineers, my design team, etc. And he's going to try, permitting his workload is free this week, to coordinate that. So we're now on June 14th, and I've had the permit application for 2 months now. Really out of my control. I don't think those footings are going to go in on the 30th unless there's some kind of miracle. So I am requesting an extension. And that's pretty much the only update I can give you. Thank you.
Councillor Zabian, your extension, you're asking for 30th of September 2021?
Yes, and it probably will be sooner than that. I just put that in to be safe. So it's just really we're just waiting for the inspector to come back and to have the DO study done.
All right, thank you very much. So the matter before council is the request of an extension to September 30th, 2021. Now, if any member of council has any clarification that they need from Mr. Zabian, now would be the time to request that. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious if the previous footings date was October the 30th, 2020. Shouldn't you have known that the geotechnical study had to have been done?
No, I didn't know. And actually, like I said a minute ago, the permit was applied on the 24th and the inspector came back on the 25th. And I have that email too, if you'd like to see it. So I don't control the inspectors, what they come up with or what their timeline is.
No, but the original agreement was October the 30th of 2020, so 6 months ago.
Right, but the permit wasn't applied to until the 24th.
Of April.
Right.
Okay.
But we hadn't, you agreed to an extension with former CAO, so that's really irrelevant. The October issue, we've passed that now. We had a new agreement in place. So that question is really irrelevant to this situation.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship. So if I understand correctly, in January 2021, that's when we amended the contract to extend it so that the footings would be in by actually May the 30th, wasn't it?
No, it's June 30th if you read the contract. June 30th, am I on mute?
No.
Oh yeah, it's June 30th if you pull the contract up.
Okay. It is June 30th. I thought it was May 30th, so.
No, I think there was two, you might have to ask the solicitor Matard. I think there was two contracts rolling around, but the one that was signed was June 30th. I think Brian had made an amendment in the middle there.
Solicitor?
Just for clarification, I don't think it matters, or I would suggest to council it doesn't matter for this discussion, but I'll call him Mr. Zabian since he's wearing that hat at the moment. He and I have different documents, if that's the case. If he believes it was the end of June, I have one signed by him. It's the end of May. But it really, I would suggest it doesn't really matter for the purposes of this discussion.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor, did you have something else?
Yeah. So it was amended then at the end of January, and it was extended to May or June, whatever the understanding was. So I'm a little bit confused around that as well. Just knowing building the way that I know it in terms of the geotechnical thing, like before, like when the plans are done and things like that, that's that major piece to ensure like the foundation goes in right and the slopes are right. And so I was just confused that knowing about the geotechnical study came so much further down the road. I would think that would have been something sort of initially thought about, but
No, actually they're not mandatory. And I think probably CO Troke he's got more experience with these developments, but they're not. It's just, it's per site. So this one was backfilled with, as we know, there's a basement there in remnant. So I guess that's part of the factor. They don't always call for them. So
I think I had understood they're essential basically for every construction site before the actual building planning and drafting starts, but that's
well, that's not what Equilibrium told me. So I'm not sure. I'm not I'm not an inspector, but it came, I guess, primarily from what's buried in there. And I think you're dealing something over on River Street. I think we're dealing with the same kind of situation where they've got it, or the town's doing one, I believe. I'm not sure the details on that, but yeah.
Okay, I don't have anything else, sorry. Lower my hand.
Very good. Are there any further questions for Mr. Zabian on this matter? All right, then we do have a request, and to turn that into a motion, that CAC recommends approval by Town Council at the June 28th, 2021 Council meeting to extend the 15% construction completion deadline to 30th of September 2021 as requested by Mike's Clothing. So I could have someone move that, please. Councillor Maxwell? And a seconder? Do we have a seconder?
Paula.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval by Town Council at the June 28th, 2021 Council meeting to extend the property deadlines to the 30th of September as requested and to adjust all of the dates in the purchase and sale agreement with Mike's Clothing. Is there any discussion on this matter? Oh, go ahead, Solicitor.
Why are you adjusting the other dates?
I think I overtyped something.
Yes.
I'm not. So let me rephrase that, please. So it has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval by Town Council at the June 28th, 2021 Council meeting to extend the 15% construction completion deadline to 30th of September as requested by Mike's Clothing. Does that work? Okay, is there discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Zabian, I think that's what we're referring to you as. You had said that perhaps it potentially could be sooner, that you'd hear back from the inspector and as to when the geotechnical study could be done. So if it's sooner, and it doesn't have to be until the end of September, you're just trying to give yourself some buffer there in the event
Right.
that it does take longer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is there anything further? Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend approval by Town Council at the June 28th, 2021 Council meeting to extend the 15% construction completion deadline to the 30th of September as requested by Mike's Clothing. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
No.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. Councillor Zabian, you may now return to the table, and the time is 9:12.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We have no correspondence this evening. However, we do have some new business, and it's business that we've seen before here with the King's Regional Emergency Management Organization bylaw. So we have a recommendation that CAC recommend first reading of the King's Remo bylaw to Town Council on the 28th of June, 2021. And further, that Council gives second reading to the King's Remo bylaw to Town Council on the 26th of July, 2021. And further, that all other emergency management bylaws be repealed. If someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And a seconder?
Paula.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the CAC recommend first reading of the King's Remo bylaw to Town Council on the 28th of June, 2021. And further, that Council gives second reading to the King's Remo bylaw to Town Council on the 26th of July, 2021. And further, that all other emergency management bylaws be rescinded. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends first reading of the King's Remo bylaw to Town Council on the 28th of June 2021. And further, that Council gives second reading to the King's Remo bylaw to Town Council on the 26th of July 2021. And further, that all other emergency management bylaws be rescinded. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York? Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. We're moving on to our next piece of business, which is the Western Regional Housing Authority Board vacancy. The incumbent has reoffered to remain on the Western Regional Housing Authority Board, and it has been recommended by our CAO that we accept this recommendation. So to turn that into a motion is that CAC recommends approval by Town Council at the June 28, 2021 Council meeting to extend the term of Kentville's representative Ashley Hancock on the board of the Western Regional Housing Authority by 1 year. If I could have CAO, go ahead.
I believe these are 2-year appointments, Mayor, so I think it would just be an extension for another term.
Okay. So allow me to modify that before we move on that. By 1 term as opposed to 1 year.
Correct.
Okay, very good. So that CAC recommends approval by Town Council at the June 28, 2021 Council meeting to extend the term of Kentville Representative Ashley Hancock on the board of Western Regional Housing Authority by 1 term. We could have that moved, please. Councillor Gerard, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor York, I saw your hand up. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval by Town Council at the June 28, 2021 Council meeting to extend the term of Kentville Representative Ashley Hancock on the board of Western Regional Housing Authority by 1 term. Councillor Gerard, I see your hand up for discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, and CAO Trope, with your background, would it be beneficial to ask Ashley once in a while, once every couple of months, once every 6 months, to give the council a report, or is that not stuff that they do at these meetings?
So thank you. So in this case here, these positions are mainly application approvals. However, there is nothing wrong since the municipality makes a contribution each year to Housing Nova Scotia, which supports the Housing Authority, to ask the Housing Authority for a report back on the activities that are going on. And that's something that easily can be done through a request to the CAO to the manager of the Annapolis Housing Authority.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? So the question is that CAC recommends approval by Town Council at the June 28, 2021 Council meeting to extend the term of Kentville Representative Ashley Hancock on the board of Western Regional Housing Authority by 1 term. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. Our next piece of business is a policy amendment on the G57 Committees of Council. Deputy Mayor Savage has provided us with a request for decision recommending an amendment to the G57 Committees of Council policy. Homework for members of council to review the policy and bring back further changes to the next CAC meeting on July 12th, with the expectation that we will approve an amendment policy at the July 28th council meeting. So please send your red lines to the recording secretary, Jennifer West, and she will collate the returns for your review as part of the July CAC package. So returns to Jennifer no later than the 7th of July. Deputy Mayor, was there anything that you wanted to say with regards to your RFD?
You know, the only thing I wanted to say, Your Worship, and thank you for that. You know, obviously during our last council meeting, there obviously appeared and was some ambiguity sort of around this policy, you know, communities of council, ad hocs, etc. And so I took it upon myself to look at the policy and make some recommendations, some amendments that I think, you know, if approved, probably will make the policy a little bit easier to navigate through. And also will be nice too to see, you know, what other amendments or suggestions that my fellow councillors make. I think that it's really committees of council and these ad hoc committees, they're crucial to the work that we do in the community. So I think it's important, and hopefully there'll be lots of red lines. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Zabia.
Thank you, Mayor Snow, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing that. I'm just, when I read about the one about the CAO evaluation, it says here that it's all of council, correct?
That's correct.
But why was there a committee set up with 4 of us this time? And I believe even in the last group, previous council, was it not the same, that it was a group of 4?
No, with the previous council,
Right.
there was an admin and fin and finance committee.
Okay.
And that was the committee that took care of
the CAO?
administrative stuff. Exactly.
Okay.
And then what happened was the interim CAO made some arbitrary decisions with regards to how we did the whole committee structure. So that's where this kind of got off the rails from our policy. So we're bringing ourselves back on the rails, and we're readjusting our rails. So
We should, and as a group, you know what? We should know those policies and follow them. So I'm glad to see this come forward. Thank you.
Exactly, but you know, even knowing the policy, when we zig instead of zagging, this is what happens. So I will also say one of the things that I plan on bringing back is that I believe that our accessibility advisory committee should not be an ad hoc committee. It should now be one of our standing committees and come to the top of the list, because the job that they are going to be doing is big. It's multi-year, and it's no longer focused on the single thing that original ad hoc committee was. So just to put that out there. So when you're reviewing this, don't only review it for the things that went wrong, review it to make it better in the way that we move it forward. You know, no hill is too high to climb on this one. So get your red pens out, and if you are using Word, Jennifer will send you a Word document. And if you use the review function, you can actually click it on and do track changes. And as you type, it will put the color, and it will give a specific color for you, and we'll actually put your name beside it, so that when Jennifer looks at it, she can actually see who made the adjustments. So just a little bit of Word functionality there. Probably not what you needed at this time of night, but.
Well, Mayor Snow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Anyways, all right.
In a former lifetime. All right. So remember, your homework is due on July 7th, and there's no do-overs and there's no dogs on this one. So our next piece of, no dogs eating your homework because it's all online. Anyway, that's just my sad input there. So what we have next is a recreation proclamation, because June is Recreation and Park Month in Canada, and I hope that you all had an opportunity to read the memo that I sent around, because our very own Director Bedingfield is famous for giving us fun facts. And so her fun fact was, did you know that urban residents living near natural environments tend to know more of their neighbors, feel a stronger sense of belonging to a community, and have a more positive view of their neighborhoods? So what more could we say about Kentville than that? So as I move on to the proclamation, is that whereas in Kentville, Nova Scotia, recreation practitioners are continually working to create and grow accessible local recreation and parks options, and providing opportunities to explore in our backyards. And whereas participating in recreation helps to connect interpersonal relationships, support healthy, active lives across the lifespan, and celebrate our diverse cultures while creating opportunities to learn, grow, and self-reflect. And whereas our parks, green space, and trails provide places to be in nature, learn about local ecosystems, and continually respect, maintain, and preserve Mi'kma'ki, where we live, work, and play. Therefore, the town of Kentville do hereby proclaim the month of June 2021 to be Recreation and Parks Month in the province of Nova Scotia, acknowledging the year-round benefits of parks and recreation in our community, dated in the town of Kentville, Nova Scotia, this 14th day of June 2021. And that concludes our public business. We do have land business, which must be conducted in a closed session, and we require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. We will not be returning to Facebook Live for adjournment of this meeting. So if I could have a motion to move into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. Kathy, Councillor Maxwell, thank you, and Councillor York, thank you. Got ahead of myself there. It has been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into closed session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion is carried and the time is 9:26. Thank you very much, staff. And if you could give the CAO control, we will be